Okay. Is my mic on? Okay.
Yes,
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our annual budget retreat. Good morning, members of council, especially. I want to, just recognize that council's earning their keep this week with your own council retreat and about a 3-hour workshop on housing last night, and long day of learning about budget and our priorities today. So thank you, council members, for all your hard work this week and every week. You are doing a great job for our city, and we appreciate it. This morning's theme, we have our list of core values, and I would say the most highest priority value we're going to be talking about this morning is stewardship, good fiscal stewardship. So we're going to be talking, Boyce and the finance team are going to be talking about our budget, the process, and where we are financially. So I want to, looking forward to that, and we'll talk a lot about the importance of stewardship. I want to just a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, everyone should know the bathrooms are right out there. Your microphones, when you have questions, you do have to press the button at the base of your microphone to have your microphone be on. The agenda should be in your packet. And yes, I also want to welcome members of the media. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate your coverage of city issues and willingness to ask hard questions and help us get some complicated matters out to the general public so they can understand it more fully, because sometimes the way we talk about things it can be a little harder to understand. So we appreciate your willingness to translate. So first we're going to hear from our CFO, Mr. Boyce Evans, who's going to be starting in a few minutes, and Deputy Finance Director Kitron Smith. And then we're also this morning going to hear from Christy Pikowski from the Pension Board. So I would just want to thank them in advance for all their hard work. We're going to have an overview of the city's finances, as well as important matters to consider as we move through the upcoming budget process. Then this afternoon, after a break for lunch, we're going to hear from myself again and members of cabinet and other directors talking about our priorities for the upcoming budget and how they're reflected in the services we do. So this morning we're going to talk a lot about stewardship. This afternoon we're going to talk a lot about service, because the finances, being good fiscal stewards, is so we can do the services to the people of this community in so many ways. So I'm looking forward to the conversation, answering questions and discussing ideas throughout the morning. And sometimes we can answer the questions on the spot. Other times we might need to get back to you after doing a little further research. So we'll try to track those and get back to council as a whole when any questions that require follow-up. So I want to thank Boyce Evans, our CFO, and the Deputy Finance Director, Kitron Smith, and also recognize the finance team. Would the finance team please raise your hands? They're all here today, and I know the work that Kitron and Boyce are going to talk about today wouldn't be possible without the entire team. So they're an award-winning team. We are closely audited and monitored internally and externally, and we get awards every year for being good fiscal stewards on behalf of the people of the city. So that's something that we should never take for granted. We do regularly earn top-notch honors for all the good work they're doing, and so I just want to acknowledge that and say that I appreciate it, and so do the people of the city. I think we won't do introductions. I think you all know the people at this table. Our cabinet members and other directors are here in the audience, as well as members of our important partners, leaders from the Chamber of Commerce. Amy Nolan is here, and Ben Bentley from KCDC, and other important partners to the city are here as well. So the main message, and Boyce is going to get into the details, but the main message of this morning's budget is that we are fiscally healthy, and we have been and will continue to be good stewards of the city's finances. We have proper reserves and a healthy fund balance, and our work together has helped Knoxville maintain a strong budgetary foundation. And this foundation isn't just what's been true of the last 4 years. I remember in 2020 being very grateful that we had a healthy fund balance, because when the pandemic hit and we had no idea how that was going to affect our economy, we didn't have to panic. We just had to make sure that we had a steady hand and that we knew that we could cover the city's essential services going forward, even if the economy took a took a deep dive. Luckily, it didn't take a deep dive, and Boyce and Kitron are going to talk a little bit more about that. So this foundation is important. However, we're also going to hear that while we're in a good fiscal situation, the economy is changing, and we need to stay focused and disciplined. We do have ongoing issues with inflation and cooling sales tax growth, and we also have, we've been really addressing our issues of deferred maintenance head on, particularly thanks to the American Rescue Plan dollars. But those dollars are gone, and we still have deferred maintenance issues that Mr. Evans is going to talk about shortly. So we have to be focused, we have to be responsive, we have to make sure that we continue to provide the core services that city residents rely on. We can do a lot, but we can't do everything. So that's certainly a focus. One of my priorities in my second term, and I know you'll share it, is to be focused. We have a lot of challenges in our city and a lot of opportunities, and we can do many things, but we can't do everything. So, just a little reminder about our budget process. Boyce calls this a budget season, but in my experience, the budget season is never ending, and this is just when it gets really busy. So we're always implementing our budget. As you know, you just adopted a mid-year budget amendment because we were able to address some needs in the middle of the budget year. It's an ongoing conversation. It's an ongoing reaction and response to economic conditions, to the needs of our community, and also, we also have a process where we adopt an annual budget. So this year, we already have received capital requests from departments, and so I'm thankful for all the department heads and staff for getting those in, and we're in the process of accepting the request for the operating budget as well. So thank you to everyone who's preparing those requests and then analyzing them, and then we'll have this conversation today and ongoing with council members and our constituents to put together a good budget request that accurately reflects our projected revenues and our needed expenses. So as you all know, today's retreat will be followed by my budget hearings in March, the State of the City in April, legislative hearings, and then, of course, council meetings in May and June. As always, I welcome meeting one-on-one with each of you to talk about budget priorities in your districts, or just if you're citywide, in your just city priorities. So please talk to Debbie Thomas. She's back there in the orange. If you haven't already set up a meeting, please work with Debbie, and we'll find a time that works for all of our schedules. So thank you again for your time today. Boyce and Kitron and Christy are now going to move on to the presentation from the Finance Department. Boyce, take it away.
Yes, ma'am. Make sure this thing works. There we go. Okay, as the mayor said, my name is Boyce Evans. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the city. And I've also got here with the Deputy Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Kitron Smith. Also, Ms. Donna Dyer, raise your hand there, Donna. She is in charge of our revenue division, takes in all the taxes and so forth. And our purchasing agent runs the purchasing division, is out sick. Been sick for a little bit. Not COVID, but something else. But anyway, we've got, I know that for a fact, but got our assistant purchasing agent here, Pamela. Where you at, Pamela? Pamela's back there in the back hiding, but she is assistant purchasing agent. Got them, and as the mayor said, got a whole bunch of finance folks right there from the accounting division and also the treasury division, that the ones that help us put together all the numbers for this, make the projections and so forth, and we couldn't do anything without them. I mean, we're just talking this stuff this morning. That's who does the real work. If you could give them a round of applause, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. And the purpose of this morning's presentation is really threefold. One is to tell you where we stand financially at the midpoint of the FY, which was a little less than 2 months ago, December 31st. It's also to let you know how we project ending this fiscal year, FY24, that we're in right now, and to talk to you about some of the key budget factors. The mayor mentioned a few, but I'll do a deep dive into them, that we need to consider as we develop the FY24 budget. Okay, the agenda is as stated here. The one thing, the mayor did mention this, is this is how it's laid out, but Ms. Pekowski is going to talk about the pension fund and how that relates to the general fund. No briefing is complete without an agenda. All right. This is the FY 23-24 adopted budget. Adopted in that is what you approved last year, and it's been in effect. Doesn't include any amendments or anything else. This is what was approved. And I'm doing this just to give us a refresher of the 7 major funds that make up the city's entire over $500 million budget each year, $560 million roughly. The first one is the top one there, the general fund. That is the city's chief operating fund. That's where, big departments like the police department, the fire department, public service department, all those hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people and all the equipment, everything they do and use, that's where that's funded out of. It also covers, it's not just them, all the internal service departments. Finance is an internal service department. I see Mark Parker with information technology. He's one. There's all kinds of internal service departments. And the reason that's so big is that is indeed the city's chief operating fund. We also have quite a few what we call special revenue funds. Now, special revenue funds right here at 42 million and some change, those are funds for which the money in those funds is only supposed to be, or is used only, for the purpose of those funds. What do I mean? For instance, State Street Aid, commonly called the gas tax. The money comes in, it goes into a special revenue fund, and we only use that for things related to transportation. Helping with streets, paving, maybe something to do with the lighting. So it's got to be highway, street dependent. You can't use it on anything else. It's restricted. Ergo the word special. It also has the abandoned vehicle fund in it, where we take abandoned vehicles, we put them in the impound lot and so forth. Well, the fees and so forth that we get from that are intended only to be used within the abandoned vehicle fund. It's also got stormwater included in that, and solid waste. And there's quite a few others. And as you can see, it makes up a good bit of the budget at 42 million and some change. Then we have the debt services funds. Those are the funds that we put aside to pay down our debt requirements for each FY. And Kitchener will talk more about that in a bit. The capital projects fund there, you can see it was 37 million and some change for this FY. That is what we use to fund anything that is $10,000 or more and has a useful life of 1 year or more. And you'll note this call out that I've got here, right here. It was 42 million less in this FY that we're in right now than it was the previous year. Why? Because we didn't get that ARPA. Remember last year, in FY23, we had 20 million come in roughly from the second tranche of ARPA. And we also had another, 21 million from ARPA, and then we had 20 million from what's called TDEC ARPA come in. Well, we don't have those in this FY, so we're back to kind of where we normally hang in the mid-30s. Enterprise funds. Those are funds that are to be operated like a business. That is, the various entities involved charge for the services that they provide, and it goes back into the enterprise funds. For instance, our convention center fund that Mary Bogert, I saw her here a little while, there she is over there. I mean, she and her team run that, the convention centers, as well as a lot of other major footprints for us. But when people pay to use that facility, it goes back into the convention center fund. It's an enterprise fund intended to operate like a business. Same thing with our golf courses at Parks and Recs with Cheryl Ely that they run. You pay to play, it goes back in there. The same thing with metro parking. We do charge a little bit for parking, and it goes back in there, and we then get with PBA to upkeep our parking facilities.
Mr. Evans, I
Yes,
think
ma'am.
Ms. Parker has a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Just quickly, the hotel motel tax going towards the convention center, which fund is it in?
The city hotel motel tax, that does go toward paying the convention center debt. That is not a special revenue fund here. That is a, I don't know, Kitchen, what would you call it? It
Debt
comes in,
service.
it goes right there. I tell you, go ahead.
It is grouped with our enterprise funds. It is actually
Okay.
Fund 506-004.
Okay, that's where that goes. I was wondering. Yeah. Kitchen's got them all by numbers. I
Sorry.
don't. I've got a few, like general funds, Fund 100, then debt service 305, 401, but she's got all of them, to include all the categories go below. Our internal service funds, that's another big one there, 70.7 million. Those are funds where we charge the departments for the projected use based on volume and what they'll have done for the FY. For instance, we charge the departments that have vehicles and heavy equipment and so forth a certain amount of their budget, and it comes back into the fleet services pool, okay? That is one of those type funds. We do the same thing with our healthcare insurance. We do the same thing with risk management. We also have our public buildings funds. In other words, like if they come back in, and then a lot of times we're ended up paying PBA rent for like the city county building stuff. Well, we charge the various departments based on square footage usage and so forth. So that is what I mean by internal service funds. And then we have the one there, the Affordable Housing Fund. I think you know what that is. That is to pay for affordable housing initiatives, roughly almost 7.5 million. So again, those make up our total budget, 559 million and some change. The focus area though today, really as we get going, will be the general fund, because that's the city's chief operating fund. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Kitchen Smith, who will get into fund balance, debt portfolio, and so forth.
Yeah. Thank you, Boyce. Now we're going to look at our general fund balance at the end of FY23. You may be asking, what is fund balance? Our fund balance is the city's savings account, our reserves. And at the, I should say in our general fund balance, we have 5 categories. We'll start with our first being non-spendable, and that is our non-cash assets, i.e. our inventories in the general fund. And at the end of FY23, that was a little over $556,000. The next category is our restricted category. The reserves in this category are restricted by law or a third party. And at the end of FY23, we just had a little under 1.6 million, excuse me, a little under $1.6 million, and that's just a small amount of grant funding that we had in the general fund. The next category is the committed category. The reserves in this category are designated by council. It is also the home to our 20% stabilization account and our 1% reserve, and I'll talk a little more about that a little bit later. But at the end of FY23, that was sitting at a little over $68.4 million. Excuse me. And then next we have our assigned category. The reserves in this category are designated by the finance department. And in that, we also have our 5% for best practices. And then lastly, which is the category that we are probably most interested in, is the unassigned category in the general fund balance. And at the end of FY23, we had a balance of $46.8 million in our unassigned fund balance, bringing our total general fund balance to $143,644,481. As I mentioned, going back to the stabilization account, the 1% reserve, and the 5% for best practices, it is recommended that we maintain a minimum of an amount equal to 25% of our annual budget in our fund balance to ensure our bond ratings. and we'll talk also a little bit more about our bond ratings. So as we look at that, the 20% stabilization in the committed comes to right at $60.8 million, and that was established by resolution in 2012. Then we have the 1% reserve, which was established by ordinance in 2022. That's right at $3 million. And then we have the 5% for best practices, which is in the assigned category, comes in right at $15.2 million. And that was established in 2021. So bringing a total of this reserve, this minimum of 25% reserve that we're maintaining in the fund balance, right at $78.8 million. Or if you're looking at the total general fund balance, it is right at about 55% of our entire balance. Now we'll change gears a little and we'll talk about the city's debt portfolio. The city is currently carrying right at $165 million worth of debt. And as we look at this slide, we're going to be discussing the purpose, I should say, the different types of debts and exactly what we issued the debt for. So we'll start by the small sliver, the gray sliver there, that's titled Streetlights. In 2018, that's our 2018 series. At that time, we took out right at $14.6 million to convert our streetlights to LED lights. And right now, we are still, a remaining balance is $7 million, and that's a total of 4% of our debt portfolio. Then the next two pieces we're going to look at are the green piece and the blue piece. They are for our 2021 series, and that series was issued for two purposes. The first purpose being the green portion there, right at $23 million, or 14% of the portfolio. That was for the refunding of two earlier debt series that we had. That was our 2012 debt series and our 2014 debt series. And so we refunded those as part of the 2021 series, and we were able to gain a savings of about $5.4 million because we were able to refund that debt at a much lower interest rate. The second portion, the blue portion here, that is right at about $65 million, and it is 39% of our portfolio. And that debt was issued for the St. Mary's redevelopment and for the public safety complex. And then lastly, the largest portion of our debt portfolio, which is the convention center. Right now, we're carrying $70 million of debt, and again, that's about 43% of our portfolio. I think it's important to know that we issued around $168 million of debt in 2022 for our convention center, and at this point, we're down to only owing $70 million left on that. That debt is scheduled to be paid off in 2032, but as we've had conversations before, we are still looking at hopefully paying that debt off a couple years early, perhaps around, we're thinking 2029.
Kitchen, before you move, is this working? Yeah. Before you move from the slide, I just want to highlight something. You know, the debt that we issued in 2021, since I've been mayor, we were very fortunate to refinance the green. A refund
Yes.
is in my vocabulary, it's like refinancing when the interest rates were really low. So both the green and the blue were issued at the same time under very favorable interest rates, saving the city at least $5 million, if not more. And so even though, and also, so that saved us money on past capital debt, and also the blue is towards our top priority, which is public safety and getting that redevelopment of the public safety complex done. So I'm really glad that we had favorable terms rather than having to do that right now. So good job, finance team.
Yes, thank you. Now we'll talk about our annual debt service payments. The goal here is really just to show that the city is making substantial debt service payments every year. If we look at the yellow starburst there, from FY21 to the end of this current fiscal year, FY22, we will have paid $39.2 million in debt service, and that's pretty substantial. So we'll look at the 3 years that we have here, FY22, 23, and 24. And in FY22, we paid a total of $11.5 million in debt service. FY23, $13.5 million. And our current year, we're on schedule to pay $14.2 million in debt service payments. Just also to explain a little more, we have our blue blocks and our orange blocks. The blue blocks are our GO debt, our general obligation debt. That debt is paid through our property tax, a portion of our property taxes. And then we have the orange block, which is our convention center debt, which is also known as our enterprise debt. Ms. Parker was asking earlier the revenue source for the payment of that debt. There are two major revenue sources, and that is our TDZ revenue and our city hotel motel tax. And then lastly, we will talk about the city's bond ratings. The city's bond ratings are basically our credit rating. And there are three main factors that the rating agencies look at in determining our bond ratings, very similar to us as individuals. One of the first things they look at is something similar to our debt-to-income ratio. Basically, is the city bringing in enough revenue to cover its expenditures every year, as well as pay off, as well as cover its debt service payment for the year? And so the answer to that is yes. We are not only able to, bring in enough revenue to cover our expenditures every year and our debt service payments, we also are not having to dip into our fund balance year after year in order to make that happen. And that's another something that they do look at. I did a 10-year look back, and from 2014, we've only had a dip in the fund balance 3 times. And the last time was in 2020, as Mayor was referencing shortly after she took office, and that was during the pandemic. So as far in that category, we are doing very well. The second category that the ratings agencies look at are our reserves. And basically they ask the question, are we able to maintain our reserves or even grow them a little? And again, the answer to that question is yes. As I stated before, we are maintaining a minimum of that 25% in our general fund balance for protection of our bond ratings, as well as we're able to grow them a little and maintain a reasonable unassigned fund balance. And then lastly, the rating agencies look at the city's economic outlook. And the question they ask is the city growing? Is it thriving? And I think, again, a resounding yes. To me, I think there are kind of 3 main factors that you can look at that support that. I think the first is our vibrant downtown. I think we all have watched the growth and just the improvement of our downtown. I think we all have the opportunity to enjoy that. Second, I would say, would be the stadium. We have a new stadium coming downtown, and that's expected to be completed in 2025. And then, of course, we have the revitalization and the capital investment that we're able to do year over year, whether we're talking about the east side of town, the north side of town, the south side of town. And of course, I think our colleagues will talk more about that later today. But those are kind of the 3 main factors and categories that the rating agencies look at in determining our bond ratings. And this was really the determining factor in 2022 when they upgraded us to AAA. We've been able to maintain that, and we anticipate continuing to maintain our AAA bond rating going forward. I'll now turn this over to Boyce.
Thank you. Before you leave that slide, I just want to comment that those AAA bond ratings, not every city earns those, and that's a great scorecard of our strong fiscal stewardship. And it's not just like we want to get A's because we want to be good students and so forth. It actually saves us money. It saves us money when we need to borrow. It helps investors say Knoxville's a good investment. It helps other people in the private sector when they're investing in Knoxville be like, oh, is this city maintaining its infrastructure and so forth. So this is again, not something to be taken for granted. I think that we compare favorably to many other cities. And I'm really, really proud of that and appreciate council's support for that good fiscal track record. Thank you, Katrin.
Yes.
Vice Mayor.
One question. Back to page 5, you mentioned the stadium. That debt hasn't been issued. Can you talk about what this will look like when that is issued?
Well, the stadium debt will be issued by the Sports Authority, and debt service payments are not anticipated to start on that until 2026. And what the city and the county will be doing is providing gap funding. And so depending upon, and I will say once that starts in 2026, we anticipate the contribution from the city and from the county to be a little north of $850,000. As time goes on, we do anticipate revenues to increase around the stadium. And so the gap funding needs from the city and the county hopefully will lessen over time.
And can you just refresh us on the sources of funds to pay down that debt?
The sources of funds, the Sports Authority, there's multiple sources, but Boyce has really been a lot closer to that than I am here.
It's first off, you're going to have the team's rent payment. That's relatively stable. You're going to have the city's going to have the sales tax coming in from in and around the stadium. And we're also going to have those, the warehouse TIF district, if you will. Well, as that investment is made, and we can already see that going on, and that those tax incremental financing agreements roll off, then our property taxes go way up on the new development as those are paid off. So really, those are your big sources of funds right there. And like Kitchen said, based on the analysis that we did, and it wasn't just us, we got with two financial advising companies, our bond count, others, and look, we think somewhere north of $850K will probably be our initial debt service payments. I mean, it could be a little higher. We'll see how it goes, but I think we're in that ballpark there. And also, as Kitchen said, as things continue to grow around there, I believe those will start to decrease over time.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Boyce? Hey,
Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question? Just looking historically, since we're on this discussion about the debt, in a historical sense, what I've looked at would lead me to believe that, maybe the high water mark is probably in 2004 for debt, and we're probably $100 million down from that level. And you mentioned that you're paying down about $14 million a year in the presentation.
14.2, I think, for this
14.2.
FY.
And that's been pretty consistent, but just because I think a lot of folks, maybe need a refresher or just a little bit of historical context. But in a historical context, the city's debt is very low compared to where it's been in a high water mark. Is that right?
That's correct. For instance, now we did do the public safety complex, and we needed to. We got good interest rates on it and all the rest of that. But the pie would be shrunk, if you didn't have that, okay? The pie would just consist of the orange, the gray, and the green. It would be a whole lot smaller. But that is something new that we've taken on, which we should have. We're still, we're in good shape. We've talked to financial advisors about it, and we've got a squared away debt portfolio right now. So, yes, it is going down over time. Just like the streetlights, Kitchen mentioned at first, was 14 point something million not long ago. Now it's down to 7 million. Every year, we're moving on this. So, sir. Okay. And what I'm going to do is, thanks, Kitchen. I'm going to talk about, we got some fancy words up there, but it's essentially where the money comes from and goes. Okay, this right here shows the 24 general fund only at 304 million and some change, and kind of where we get that revenue. The biggest piece, of course, there is on the top with the property taxes. That's 48.1% of the total. That is important. You remember that we raised property taxes, I think 36.5 cents from the certified tax rate a couple years ago. That generates about another $35 million a year. That is good. It is good to have that rolling in. And you can see there, 146 million and some change, almost half of the general fund budget. The next one, I'm going to point to two things here, is local option sales tax growth, right here, 63.8, or really 63.9, and then state shared sales tax, it's 24%, or 24 million. Now, the local option sales tax, just, I don't know if I'm refreshing memory or telling something new to, but it's, if you buy something, buy this, you're going to pay 7% sales tax on it, and on top of that, you're going to pay another 2.25% in local option sales tax. That 2.25%, when you add it all up for a year, comes in, and this year we projected it, and actually we're exceeding it, 62.9 million. That's a big deal. That is a very big deal. And I'll talk later on, the sales tax growth has it's skyrocketed the last 3 or 4. It's starting to flatten out some, or the state's projecting that. I agree with them to an extent, and, but we'll talk more about that. Another big one here, sales tax related, is the state shared sales tax. And as you can see, that's not chump change. 24 million for almost 8% of the total budget. That's a lot. What happens is the state gets that 7%, and I don't know exactly what formula they use, but we get back a certain amount, and it continues to grow over time. It hasn't been growing as fast as the local option sales tax, but it's been growing nevertheless, and that's a good thing. We also have here the KUB pilot. We budgeted that at 25.1 million for this year, 8.2%. You remember, in fact, you approved something on this, I think at the last council meeting or the one before that, where KUB has all of these utilities, and instead of paying us property taxes like commercial and residential and so forth, they make payments in lieu of taxes. And it's based on a lot of it, the amount of equipment they own and the worth, which is gigantic. And they also, some is based on the land that they occupy. So that has been growing year after year. Frankly, I think we probably put it a little too high here at 25. As I recall, it's going to come in, looks like now at around 24 something million. But it's still an increase from what it was the prior year. So that's a big source of income. We also have other taxes here. Now, other taxes, I always like a good nebulous term like that, miscellaneous, something that makes me want to dig into it. But other taxes, those are things like, there's a page like this of them, you know, mixed drink taxes, beer taxes, wholesale liquor inspection fees. It goes on and on. And Kitchener's going to speak to some of those here in a bit. But that'll tell us up to 32.7 million. We also have intergovernmental, which is, and other revenues for 1.9 and 2.4%. The intergovernmental is things like the state levies an excise tax on Tennessee-based banks. We get some of that back. The federal government supplement for police and fire positions each year. We get something there. A whole lot of things go into that intergovernmental. And then we have other revenues, another good nebulous term, but there's no other way to group some of this stuff. You can't just pull out one thing and say that's it, because that may just be a tiny, I guess we could have pies all over the place and that would be it. But that's licenses and permits, charges for service, fines and forfeitures, and a whole bunch of things make up there. But the total comes down to 304 million and some change. And this is just how it shows graphically. And again, the big takeaway here is out of that 304 million, you know, property taxes is taking up almost half this pie. And additionally, the sales taxes I mentioned, I mean, look at that gigantic orange piece there, and then this big blue piece off the state. That's practically 75%, 2/3 of our budget right there. Then we've got the other taxes in here, the KUB pilot. We have some smaller ones over here. I am always proud when I see, as Kitchen said, we've only had to do it a few times recently. Recently to me is like it was the last 10 years, but we didn't have to use any fund balance for FY24. So this is how the money looks coming in to the general fund, where it comes from. And this is where it goes.
Ms. Parker has a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Before you move on to expenditures, the revenues, we've had conversations recently citywide trying to understand how Knox County schools are funded and the portion of our sales tax that goes towards that.
Right.
When you're breaking down the 7% from the state, 2.5% from the city, that doesn't include that money that goes to the schools, right?
Correct.
The local option sales tax money, we do pay a good bit of local option sales tax money to the schools.
But it never comes directly to us. It
No.
gets taken out before it comes.
More specific, just to break it down, we pay, okay, out of that whole thing that comes in, I think this year, just from the city, it was 227 million. Out of that, when you break down what the county gets and what the city, heck, hang on just a second. I'll go back, I promise. Okay, I brought this along just in case. All right? 227 million comes in. Out of that, okay, we get 63 million, 27.8%, and to the Knox County gets 164 million. So that means, if you're just looking at what state law requires, just state law, they get 22.2%, or roughly 50 million above what most municipalities inside of their respective counties pay to the schools, okay? So we pay a lot to schools. We pay a lot for the schools. And
I think that's always an important point to underscore. I'm glad you asked, because people are like, why doesn't the city contribute to schools? We do contribute. 72 cents of every sales tax dollar collected in the city of Knoxville goes to schools, and that's 22 cents above what's required. So I think that looks like, and our overall contribution to schools last year was over 150 million. And it looks like about 50 of that, or some portion of that was
above and beyond what we
above and
have to
beyond
do.
what law requires. So the city's contributing quite a bit to the schools across our community. And we don't get it, we don't, like, that's, the state doesn't send it to us and then we pass it on, they take it first and then we don't see it. Correct, Mr. Evans? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
okay.
does that go to the county
Yeah,
first?
the money actually all goes to the county, and then the county issues us our portion and issues the other portion to the schools.
But it's done per the agreements that have been set forth. I
Right.
think the current 72-28% split's been in place since 1988.
Since the city went out of the school business.
That's correct.
Mr. Roberto?
Thank you, Mayor. Boyce?
Sir.
While we're on the discussion of revenue, there's a piece of revenue that historically the city had seen come in that is absent, and that's because of some action taken by the state. What I'm looking at, I would say, because of changes made to the hall tax, we're probably have missed maybe 25 million in revenue that would have come in that didn't because of those changes. And I just wanted to get your sense of whether that number's about right.
I actually think it's less than that, but here's the deal. Here's how this went down. Every year, I can remember, first off, you never could project the amount that the hall tax was gonna come in at, because it's based on, how well businesses are doing and all that, and what they're working with the stocks and so forth. I'm not in that company, so I don't have to worry about it. But we would get a big cut of that. And we would get anywhere from 5 million to, I've seen as much as 12.5, 13 million that we could put in a budget amendment in the middle of the year to fund all kinds of capital things. And those days are gone. That's gone away. So, no.
Councilmember Roberto, on another, aside from the halls tax, back in 2004, when, I think there was the economy across the state was struggling, and the state took some local option sales tax revenue, the state share, they took some that used to go to localities. So in the last, at least 4 years, if not longer, the Tennessee Municipal League's highest priority has been to restore the money that's collected in municipalities, to return back to those pre-crisis times, because the sales tax revenues to the state have been really, really high. They have a huge amount of fund balance there that cities across the state could use. So it's been TML's highest priority. It hasn't gotten any traction yet, and unfortunately, I don't anticipate that it will this year. But I think it's still important to keep trying, because I was supposed to be temporary.
Well, Mayor, and I appreciate you bringing up that point, and then also I think it's important just from a historical context for people to remember that there's a missing piece of revenue that the city was getting for a very long time. And so by raising awareness of that, hopefully we can continue that conversation and hopefully make some changes. But thank you.
Sure. Okay, talk for a minute about where it goes. The key thing to look at here is, look at where I got the blue lines. Well, that one's not fat enough. But anyway, you go around here, you go around this box, and these are all the workforce expenditures that we make. It's 61% of the total budget, 134 million in the general fund. That includes salaries, healthcare, pension, and other benefits, another nebulous term. That's things like longevity pay, long-term disability, Social Security, Medicare, that type thing. But anyway, we're a service organization. So really, I mean, look how much of this pie, if you were to cut it like that, and then go up right there, that whole amount is funding the workforce, because that's what we do. We're a service organization. We also have over here, fleet, we have risk, utilities, grants. These are broken up into major categories, but that's where our money goes. And things like other charges, that's, again, another laundry list. That's like our travel, our training, bank services. It's just a ton of stuff that's in there. So the takeaway again, I think the salaries here for right at 100 million, almost exact. And then you add in the other, and it's 134 million, which lends itself to, speaking of that, every time you hire somebody and you're paying them $1, you can pretty much count on you're paying them $1.35, not just $1, because of all these other things, all the health care, pension, other benefits, and so forth. So that's, well.
Yeah, Mr. Evans, thank you for pointing that out. I think that's always important to underscore. We need to be good stewards because we're a service organization, and the money we have is to give our employees fair salary and benefits, and then some of the other stuff is equipment. We have a lot of vehicles that they go around to do the service, emergency and core essential services across the city. So salary and benefits to pay our workers, that is the bulk of our budget, and the balance of it is equipment and gear to make sure they can do their jobs well. So Boyce, I always appreciate you bringing that up.
Yes, ma'am. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the chief executive or the executive director, rather, of the pension board, Ms. Christy Pekowski, will talk us about the pension fund, because it does have an effect on the general fund. So, and I will hand you this so you can flip the slides. You just hit the right one there, and it'll take you to the
Boyce,
next.
before you leave, just
Sir.
one question. You mentioned that permitting fees, for example, are part of other revenues. Has, given the spike in permitting and all things development in the city over the past year, has that grown in a significant way, or is it still negligible as the percentage of the whole?
Do you know if it's grown off the top of your head?
Yes.
It has grown?
Yes, but those fees are not in the general fund.
Okay. But those go back into
Yes.
plans, review, and inspection, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So yes, they've grown, but they go into, remember, inspections was a special revenue fund, so that goes back into there, sir.
Okay, so but I'm looking at the other revenue, 7.4 million, which is 2.4% of the budget. Is that growing over the past 5 years, or is it still too small to make a difference?
In general, our revenues have been growing over the past couple of years. Yes, but again,
Vice Mayor Smith, we know it's going up, but we can get you exact numbers,
Okay,
if
yeah.
not
I'd
later
like to
today,
just-
then next week.
The other revenues bucket, I'd like to see for the past few years, if that's okay.
Can do that,
Thanks.
Yep.
can do that.
I would also say that there have been years where we have had to subsidize that department when we've been down on investments in Knoxville. So it's been a few years, we've had good growth in plans review and inspections, but we've had to go in and actually subsidize that. It's designed to pay for itself. So, again, we can get you those numbers.
I'm just generally curious for the past, but also as with our discussion last night about the forecasted population for the next 5 years. I would assume that housing, permitting, fees, et cetera, those other revenue sources will continue to grow over the next 5 years.
Well, I can tell you this, I'm gonna get ahead to something, I think it's more and you're a member of council, so what you're saying is important, but it's more important than what you're saying. And that is that the growth, the growth that we're seeing right now.
Tell me more.
I'm sorry. The growth that we're seeing right now, you'll see it on the last slide when I sum things up. I've got to watch it a little bit, but the last 2 years of real growth in property taxes, real growth comes from new construction or redeveloping something so it's worth more. That is like 1.66%, something like that. Okay, that doesn't sound like much, but let me just hold that thought. So it's that, average for the last two FYs, FY '22 and '23. The 3 FYs previous to that, it was like only 88 basis points, which means it's doubled from those 4 to this. Well, every time you go up 1% in new growth, it comes out to between 1.5 and 1.7. Don, isn't that what we thought it was? About 1.5 to 1.7 million dollars extra a year. And you get it every year. It's not just a one-time shot in the arm. It keeps giving every year, same amount or possibly even growing. So that growth is indeed going on. It is indeed going on. And it does manifest itself in property taxes. And it helps. It helps. And this is the first time, I could stand up here anytime over the past years and I could always say, well, the whatever years, it averages out to, was it 1.16%? Wasn't that always it? It's not that way right now. It's on the increase.
And you saying that increase is from property taxes or overall?
Well, it increases property taxes because now the value of what you have
Right.
on your property, let's say you had a vacant lot. Well, now you put a structure on there, I don't know, a single-family house, it's real nice and all that, or even commercial, I don't know. But whatever that new thing is, and it gets assessed, and that goes on the property tax rolls. Or if you redevelop something it doesn't have to be in shambles, but once you redevelop it, that makes that value grow up. And that's why that's what we're calling real growth. And that's really the only way we've got to grow, because we're not in the annexation business and so forth anymore. And if you have a big reappraisal like happened a couple of years ago, remember the state then gives you the certified tax rate so that you can't benefit from inflation. So that real growth is crucial to us, crucial.
Yeah.
And I'm liking what I'm seeing right now.
Council, we'll delve more into this later in Mr. Evans' report, but also Grant will talk a little bit about new development. So we are getting more revenues from increased permits, and we're also getting more revenues because people are investing in our city, going from, like Mr. Evans said, a vacant lot to a developed property, which doesn't always translate into immediate change. You have to have the assessment and appraisals catch up, but it's always something I've been eager to see, that transformation, and it's happening. It's good to see. It's not as big as sometimes you might expect, seeing all the cranes around town, but more to come. Thank you, Mr. Evans. Let's go on to the next slide.
Christie?
Go ahead, Ms. Witkowski.
I'm just making sure, do I need to push the button or will they?
You need to have the green light on.
Okay, yes, I'm good
Okay.
now. Okay, good morning. I'm Christy Bukowski, the Executive Director for the City of Knoxville Pension System. And we were one of the beneficiaries of that new public safety complex, and we love our new space. It is a great place. People are coming in going, wow, this is so amazing. So we really appreciate the opportunity to move into that new building. To kind of go into pensions, we have to look back and see where our returns were for 2023, and our actual rate of return on our investments was 7.26, and our expected rate of return was 7.25. So we did hit that for 2023, and the system increased its funded status to almost 70%. And that included factoring in the lowering of the discount rate. So we were very pleased with that. And as of 12/31/2023, which is in this fiscal year, we are at 4% return, and our expected rate of return is 7.2. And so we are well on the way to meeting that. Of course, we can't guarantee what the next 6 months has in store for us, but we're at a good point, at the halfway point for our fiscal year. Expected rate of return lowered 5 basis points to 7.15 for fiscal year 24-25. And if you'll remember, that is something that we proactively did to kind of be more in line with the state's mandated 50 basis points. We can't be above 50 basis points more than what the state of Tennessee's rate of return, accepted rate of return is, which theirs is 6.75 right now. So we were wanting to be proactive and lowering it. So in 27-28, we will be down to 7%. The Plan H members are beginning to vest, and I'm happily one of them. So those members are vesting. We are actually seeing members retire under Plan H. We have about 5 members that have retired. And there are currently more active Plan H members than there are Legacy Plan members.
Can you remind us, is that 2013?
2013 was when Plan H came into effect.
And can you remind council members and others the distinction between Plan H and other plans?
Sure. So Plan H is a hybrid plan. It is still a defined benefit plan. It is not a 401k plan. And it is has a formula-based, either based on a hypothetical account that is built for the employee, based on their salary and contributions by the city and the employee, and the actual returns quarterly are applied to that. And then there's a defined benefit formula. It's based on 2% times the final monthly, 5-year final monthly average salary, and the years of service. That is what we typically refer to as the floor. So there's a minimum benefit, and then if you have a higher salary, that is capped at that, it's very complicated, capped at that salary base, then you're more than likely going to be based on the hypothetical account. And so the money is in the market, so a lot of the risk of the is put back into the fund. So it is a different plan than our older plans. There are several plans that are in the legacy plans. We have alphabet soup, A, B, C, and G, and F are in those, and different employees are covered under different plans in those plans. And they, if you need more information, we have our website. It's cokpension.org, and under plans it will explain the different plans and who is covered under them. Okay, the next slide kind of goes to talk about what our projected contributions from the city are for fiscal year 2024-25. The actuary has projected an annual required contribution of $34.3 million. Based on the projected salaries and experience that we've had with the city. As you see, for the next 15 years, it kind of goes up a little bit for the projected contributions from the city. And then we get to a point where the unfunded, which is the legacy plan, contributions for the unfunded liability, they kind of roll off, and then the normal costs kind of flatten out towards the end of that. So.
Before we leave the slide, I just want to, I think this slide's really important. A lot of cities just haven't addressed their pension liabilities, and they just keep kicking the can down to future councils and future mayors. And We have not done that, and that's good news for our employees, and it's good news for our bond rating, and it's good news for just, again, stewardship. So I'm very grateful that the city of Knoxville has not, has done right by our pensioners, future and current. That's the right thing to do. It's expensive, but it is definitely one of those, you can be penny wise and pound foolish, and we've been fiscally responsible in taking care of that on the front end instead of letting it fester. So good, that's good news for our budget.
Get the clicker.
Ms. Pikowski, anything else to add? Any questions for Ms. Pikowski? Yeah, Ms. Parker?
Do we know how?
Would you put your mic on? Or maybe it is.
Do we know how how our pension plans compare to other, I'm sure this was done when it was considered changing to a different pension system, but how we compare to other cities our size?
As far as our funded status or benefits that we offer?
As a part of what we offer, because I know there's still a lot of talk about those legacy plans and tying it to whether it's, impacting our recruitment and other things like that.
Yes, I believe that a lot of the local governments in our area, we're very fortunate to still have a pension plan. We are providing that benefit to help with recruitment, but it is a tool that is being used widely throughout the United States to help maintain local governments and state and federal governments. And we do have in comparison to our funded status, we're in a really good shape compared to some of our other local, like Memphis, Chattanooga, those groups we look at, and we're in very good standings as far as our funded status as well.
Do you know if they have legacy plans or if they have
Yes,
the hybrid plans?
there are several different plans within the state. Local governments, I know, I haven't looked at them lately, and I don't know if they've made any changes recently, but Chattanooga still offers a defined benefit plan, from what I understand, and I'm not sure about Memphis.
Chattanooga went through it. I don't know. Chattanooga went through a change at the same time we did. And they changed, they didn't create the same kind of program that we did. And they ended up having a lot of litigation related to theirs. So we ended up really better off. We ended up with a real compromise between the two possibilities that were out there. And we ended up in a good place. Chattanooga ended up in a less good place with really expensive litigation they had to fight for a number of years following that. So, but other cities do a lot of different things, but almost nobody anymore can afford that full defined benefit plan that we used to do, because it's just way too expensive.
I was just gonna say, I think a lot of, ours was changed in 2013, right?
That's
Yes.
correct.
The new Plan H came enacted in 2013. And the state, I know, I started working for Pellissippi in 2014. Theirs went into effect in 2013 as well. And if I'm not mistaken, I think a lot of those cities and a lot of different municipalities, government employers made those changes, after like the market crash and market corrections based on the housing market, because that's when I don't know, Lynn, that might have been what you were gonna say. I think that was just kind of a dawn of a new era where you had to change things.
Well-
So I went into, as a state employee, with that, something very similar to that.
Well, I would just say, I don't know if Mayor Kincannon remembers this or not, but I remember I don't know if we were on the Board of Education at the same time when this happened, but when all that crashed and you were having to take lots of money out of your general fund and put it into the pension so that you would not be in trouble with your pension, I think a lot of people realized, oh, things don't always go up. You know, I used to say, as young bankers at the time never knew that the bottom could fall out of anything. And so people weren't planning appropriately, so I think it's prudent. But the only thing I would say as a member of the, your representative on the pension board, I do think it's important that you guys really appreciate the work that the investment committee does. It's not just a plug and play. We get it, there's a pension fund advisor for us. The committee is made up of outside people who are investment professionals. I sit on it as I've majored in finance. I'm not the investment professional, but outside consultation and active investment to make sure that that 7.2 is met. And so it's taken very seriously. Christy does a great job. But people pay attention. It's not just no big deal. And because I think everybody on the pension board understands that we have an obligation to the people that work for the city to make sure when they retire, what they were promised is available. And that isn't always happening in some other communities.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Pikowski. Council members, I feel like we need a short 10-minute break to stretch our legs, use the facilities if need be, get some coffee. So let's reconvene at 10:30, please.
I don't know if you can.
Okay, thank you all for taking a quick break. Now we're re-energized and ready to hear from our finance leaders on selected revenue details.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We will start by looking at some market-driven sources of revenue specifically in our general fund. And we'll start by looking at local option sales tax. So the blue bar is our 3-year average. The orange bar is our prior year FY23, and the gray bar is current year FY24. We are taking a 6-month snapshot, so we're looking apples to apples. And again, that's going to be July 1 through December 31st. So as we're looking at local option sales tax, if we look at the 3-year average, it is a little over $26.7 million, while this current fiscal year, FY23, from July to December, we are right at $32.9 million. And we are right now 23% above the 3-year average. But if we just look back to last year, we are only $1.6 million ahead of last year, and that's just a 5% increase over prior year. So as Boyce was speaking to earlier, so sales tax is still growing, but the rate of growth is starting to slow, and so we need to be mindful of that. Next, we'll look at state shared sales tax.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Are you saying we're 1.6 million ahead of last year as of the mid-year point?
Correct. We are just looking apples to apples, July through December 31st.
So we're 1.6 million ahead of last year's midway point?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. Again, so we'll move to state shared sales tax. Apples to apples for 6 months of the year. The 3-year average for state shared sales tax, a little over $9.5 million, while this year, FY24, July through December 31st, we are a little over $11.2 million. Now that's 18% above the 3-year average, but again, just looking back to last year, we're only 110,000 over last year, and that is just right at about 1%. So again, as we're talking about local option sales tax, state shared sales tax, again, still growing, but the rate of growth has really begun to slow. Next, we'll look at beer tax and mixed drink tax. As you've heard if you've been to these presentations before from our predecessors, when the economy is good, liquor tax sales go up and beer sales go down. And it's reflected in our tax collections. And so in looking at beer tax, our 3-year average, again, apples to apples for 6 months of the year, $3.9 million. And this year, we are right at $3.6 million. Looking back against last year, on beer tax, we are a little under 1% below last year with a deficit of $277,000. And then moving on to mixed drink tax, again, for 6 months of the year, 1.3, little over 1.3 is the 3-year average. While for this current fiscal year, we've brought in a little over $1.6 million. So for the mixed drinks, we are 28% over the 3-year average. But again, just looking back to prior year, we're less than 1% ahead at only $13,000.
Hey, Kitron.
Yes.
I have a question. So 3-year average, you're going back to when? When did your data go back?
We're going back to 21,
Not 2020.
23. No, 21.
So
21,
it's all-
22, 23.
It's all post-pandemic
Correct,
data?
correct.
Okay. All right, I was just making sure you weren't
Yes, no,
going
no, we
back to
didn't.
the closure time for the
Yes.
3-year average.
Understood.
Kitron, just a quick question.
Yes.
Well, go ahead. Well, going back to the previous slide, I'm concerned about the state legislature's warm beer tax. But that, I'm kidding a little bit, but with that aside, sorry, it fell flat. No, not enough comment. Come on, everybody, back here. Thank you. All right. Does the local option sales tax largely follow population growth? Is that I mean, I understand tourism plays a large role in that, but if you look at population growth, is this in sync with the first two columns?
The local option sales tax, part of the factor that goes into that is, yes, population. And we've got a steady influx of people moving into not only the state, but around here from other places. And most of them are working age, so that is a factor. But I'm just gonna tell you, the biggest thing that feeds into that is inflation. So as inflation goes down, so does that 2.25% is incrementally less. So if inflation's going down, your local option sales tax is going down. If inflation's going up, it goes up. And you'll see in a chart I get to a little bit later on where we talk that. But like right here, if you go back to those previous 3 years, like Kitchen was talking about, you see right now we're at 32.9 with a 3-year average of 26.7. Well, that's a considerable difference there. But as inflation is starting to slowly slow down, local option sales tax, they're saying it'll grow 1-2%. We'll talk about that in a minute. That's why you only see a $1.6 million rise this year above last. But the main thing is inflation.
Okay, thanks.
Inflation, sorry.
I would just add, Vice Mayor Smith, that in economics class, they always said things like sales tax are elastic. They have much more up and down with the consumer confidence and just the economy as a whole, whereas things like property tax are inelastic. So that's just a general trend. Property tax stays steady, sales tax goes up and down more with the economy.
And now we'll look at market-driven sources of revenue that really go to support our tourism and our convention center debt. Again, just as a reminder, these revenues are not part of our general fund. So we'll start with the general admissions tax. And just to give a little bit of context, our general admissions tax is approximately a 4.5% tax on UT sporting events, movies, etc. It is good to know that there are a lot of exceptions to this tax, and they generally are recreational events held by cities, schools, and nonprofits. So again, we're looking at we're looking again at first 6 months of the year. Our 3-year average for general admissions tax, right at $695,000. While current year, we're just a little under that at $680,000. We're just 2% below the 3-year average. But if we look back to last year, we had quite a jump in our general admissions tax, and that came in right at $948,000. So I'm sure you're asking yourself, well, why? The number of home games, UT home games we have, will greatly affect this revenue, as well as how well our record is. We don't have a good record at UT football. We generally, we're not going to the games as much, so it does affect this. Next, we'll look at our our city hotel motel tax. Again, this is a 3% tax on hotels within the city limits. And this revenue, again, is also going to support the payment of our convention center debt. So again, 6-month snapshot, 3-year average, $2.5 million, while current fiscal year, we've brought in $3.7 million. And so right there, we're about 45.7% above the 3-year average. But again, looking just back at last year, we're only about 13% over prior year with an addition, we're ahead by $424,000. As we're looking at hotel motel tax, we're seeing the same trend that we've seen in the local option and state shared sales tax. Again, still growing, but growing at a slower rate. And then lastly, we're going to look at the county hotel motel tax. Again, 3-year average, $528,000. While current year, we brought in almost $790,000, and we are 49.5% above the 3-year average. While again, just looking back at last year, first 6 months of the year, we're only 15.6% above with $107,000.
Kittrick,
Yes.
what do you mean county hotel motel?
The county hotel motel tax, we receive 10% of all hotel motel tax collected within the county.
Outside of the city bounds?
Correct.
How'd we get that deal?
As far as I know.
What else can we collect outside of that?
As far as I know that it is.
No, I mean,
Yes, and we
seriously,
were-
why do we get a cut of that?
I'd have to look into it and get back with you on that.
Maybe to help offset the schools.
Well, is it,
It's a fair trade
that's
for
what I
the
mean,
50
like,
million.
how is that brokered, that deal?
Again, I'd have to get back with you on.
I just asked the same question, and the answer is it's complicated, and
The
That's
convention
informal.
center was part of that deal? Okay, you know that for a fact?
I don't know.
I think right now the answer is it's always been that way. I always love hearing that. We need to look into it and figure it out and get back to you.
Definitely
But,
get back to you.
Mr. Johnson might be able to. I'm just curious how we brokered that deal and what else we can do.
That'll be the first stop as we try to figure it out.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
yes,
So just
Councilwoman Parker.
piggybacking off of that, those funds do go towards the convention center debt, and they're in our revenue bond.
Our city hotel motel tax is dedicated to pay off our convention center debt, while our county hotel motel tax, we use that to support our current, we're required to spend those dollars on tourism, and right now we're using those dollars to support our contract with Visit Knoxville. Okay, I will turn this back over to Boyce, and he will talk about our projections for FY '24.
Okay, and I can't stand it any longer. I've got to get old school for a minute here. All right, this slide is extremely important because it tells you how we anticipate ending FY '24. And we're not just looking at the current budget and running the numbers. What we do, we look at what we think, we're at the midpoint, so we know what it was at the midpoint of the FY. Now we project out through how it's gonna end. We don't just take what the second half of the FY said on the budget and project that out. All the analysts that you see back there are working, and they can't just come into Kitchener and say, well, it's times 2, or they'll be in trouble. Anyway, so they don't do that. They do put some hard work into this. And our total projected revenues are gonna be almost 313K, all right? Our total projected expenditures, we believe through the remainder of the FY will be 309.4 million. I said 312.6K, I meant 312.6 million, 309.4 million. Well, so if you take total projected revenues, you subtract total projected expenses, and you end up with a surplus, excess of operations, if you will, of 3.2 million. Now hold that thought on that 3.2 million. We're gonna go to the other part of the equation under this blue line. So we go to the FY '23 ending fund balance, which Kitron mentioned a little while ago, of roughly 46.8 million. Okay, now we gotta subtract out the budget amendment that was just approved in last month sometime, January 9th, I think. And then you take that figure up there and you add that back in, 3.2 million. Anyway, you calculate all this out, and we believe we will end the FY, if nothing changes, we don't do any other big budget amendments,
Nothing breaks.
nothing bad happens, at about 45.2 million is where we believe we will end the FY right now. And just note that that is about $1 million short of where we ended FY '23. Remember on Kitron's chart, we came in at about 46 million. So any questions on this one right here? Okay, who's got the clicker? Can I set it down?
Council and Mr. Evans, I just wanted to say, I'm really glad we do the mid-year budget amendments and, you know, because we do have some priorities that pop up in the middle of the year. And also, this is really good news that we still have a projected unassigned fund balance of over $45 million. So that will help us meet some of our one-time capital expenses, but not as many as we have, as Boyce is about to share.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, here's some of the key things that we need to look at as we prepare the FY25 budget. Some of them are been on here before, some of them are new, and we'll talk through those in detail. Inflation, okay? If you look here at the last 3 years of inflation, I mean, you can, excuse me, it started really taking off from FY20 to the really up here to the present. You can see that FY20 jump of 5.08 to FY21, then 8.58, that was huge, to FY22, then 4.5. You add all those up, it comes to 18.2%. Now, look at this little thing down here in the bottom. 129 million is our normal competitive spend. That's what Pamela and the purchasing division and so forth are working on, that they're competing out in RFPs, RFQs, hard bids, and so forth. You take that 129 million and you increase it by 18.2%, and that comes to 23.5 million. That's almost the amount of our KUB pilot. It's huge. Inflation has made and is continuing to make a difference. And we also, just look at some of the numbers here. You may say, well, yeah, that's over 3 years. But just look at, let's look at the most recent one. FY22 to 23, a 4.5% jump there. That equals to 5.8 million increased costs in real dollars. That's 5.8 million we can't use on something else. And inflation is slowing. The economists at the University of Tennessee that prepared the help the governor get ready for the state of the state and so forth, and give them all the budget information, or a lot of how they think things are recommended, or thinking it's going to be around 2.7%. So I guess the message is, yeah, it's been taken off like crazy from FY20 all the way up to here. We think it's going to start slowing, but it's going to grow nevertheless. So that 2.7% has real ramifications. Now, that's all nice and theoretical. Let's talk about what happens. I've got a few examples here of what that's caused. We had a target system for KPD about less than 6 months ago. We went out to bid in October for it. We had $217,000, and it came in at around $250K. So we had to pull some money from the driving simulator project that they had just to make this one whole. We also had the flashover simulator for the fire department. We had $75,000 for that. We came in at around $105,000. So we had to pull some money out of the training academy budget, because it is a training academy and training type thing. And those are small. Let's talk about a big one. You just reappropriated $900 and something thousand in the recent budget amendment. Well, where that money came from, if you'll remember, was we had budgeted a lot of money. I don't know the exact amount, I don't remember, but it had to be a lot for us to be able to pull 900 from it. But we'd appropriate a lot of money for the Garage C repairs over in the vicinity of the Coliseum. Well, when we went to market and the prices came back in, they were so high that we just had to table it and back off. So finally, Mary and her folks got with us, and I don't remember if it was your idea or our idea or both, was like, well, we can do something else with that money, because we need it to support the cooling towers and so forth that we're going to have, the structure and so forth. So we ended up reappropriating that money. So what I'm saying is it's not just numbers on a chart. What happens a lot of times is we do our best estimate, the departments do their best estimate, but when they go out for bid or they go out for proposals and so forth, the costs just come in higher. And particularly in super increasing years like this, you could go out you say you got appropriated, you're going to go out in 3 months for it. You go out in 3 months, the price is already up there. You can't afford it now. So you gotta figure out something else to do. It causes some real problems. The good news is, it's slowing down, 2.7% growth, that's probably about right, okay? But it's still growth nevertheless, so we need to be mindful of it.
Yeah, I would just add, and then Ms. Parker, have your question, is that, we just said a couple of slides ago, inflation makes our sales tax go up, but it also makes our purchases go up, and on balance, inflation is doing more harm than good to our city budget. So we're glad to see the Federal Reserve and the national economy, slowing down. Inflation is being reduced, and that's going to be helpful, but it's still a significant factor. Ms. Parker?
I realize this is inflation is a moving target, but is there, are we trying to incorporate the anticipated inflation cost into
Yes,
projections for this
Yes.
budget year?
absolutely.
The answer is yes, yes, ma'am. Yeah, it's just, it's been getting out of hand for a while. And like the mayor just said, thankfully, it's slowing a little bit. And should slow some more. The feds are talking about lowering the interest rate a couple times. I think the first one we'll see was our Marquette advisors told us probably wouldn't be March now, more like May, because they're pushing to get to 2%. But, that should help as the inflation goes down. So, no, and the mayor, what she just said, very, very, very accurate. Remember, we're on the local option sales tax slowing growth, we're dealing with 2.25%, okay? The whole rest of the $1 in that example is subject to inflation, it goes up. So it's better to have your inflation go down, local option sales tax goes down a little bit with it. Okay, let's talk about rising personnel costs. And I got some numbers here and just take you through it. The bottom line is this, we were moving along pretty good through about FY '21, not that much increase. But then in FY '22, a couple things started to happen. If you'll remember back, I know in finance there was some other, we were losing people. They were jumping ship. They're going to the lab, they're going to UT, they're going to other private businesses, not paying enough. And so we started working on the comp study then. But while that's going on, we had to do some things. We had to increase the starting pay for people just coming in above our minimum just to get them here, or they wouldn't come in the door. If somebody else offered more money, they'll take it. We also, because we were losing people, we had to increase overtime. So you had increased overtime costs. And if you remember in that year, that was the year in full of the pandemic. And we ended up providing some COVID pay to those who were working with people that either had COVID or a very reasonable probability of having COVID on a pretty much a daily basis. So anyway, the costs go up. Now let's go move along. Then we implement the comp study right here, which was about a 6% on average across the board increase. Now, that wasn't 6% for everybody. Some got more, some got less, some got 6. But this happened, and it corrected a lot of things and still is. Thank goodness we did it. Finance would be in a horrible shape. But we got more people in, easier, quicker, and frankly, I think it's helping hang on to some folks. But what is going on right now, and by the way, from here back, those are actuals, okay, for every pay and benefits excluding CAT. From here forward is projections. Frankly, I think 149.7 is probably a little high, but it's what we estimated, projected it at. It may be a little bit high there. Anyway, regardless, it is going to be up in here some. And the reason it's going to be up is just like back in FY '22, when we started to having to pay people more money just to get them into the door, we're doing that right now. We're having to do it right now. I'm thinking about, in particular, the engineering department. Nothing wrong with the engineering department, great department. But they're having a tough time getting professional engineers in the door because they can make more other places. And oh, by the way, some of them have left to go to where they are making more. I can think of real names. It's happening right now. They're having a tough time. Plans review and inspection with Peter. Where you at, Peter? Okay, Peter, he's having to bring in people at a higher rate. He comes up and he talks about it with me and tells me his tale of woe. And eventually I say, yeah, you've got a case and let's do it. And this is really what goes on. But, so I mean, this got to be justified, but that's what happens. So we're bringing in people there. We've also got the police department. And I'm sure this will be talked about later, but we raised the police department up. Police department's, standing tall and looking good. And then all of a sudden, though, everybody up around us raised up even more. So now our police department is, I don't know if they're the lowest, but there's a lot of other police departments that are paying a whole lot more in our region. Therefore, it is hard to get people in the door. If I can go to whatever county and make more as a starting officer, why don't I do it?
And do less.
And yes, and probably do less. And so it's.
Council, before he goes on, I think this is a really important slide. We did a compensation study, and based on that, we did a comprehensive pay adjustment a couple years ago. And I just want to say that has worked in many cases, in most cases. So I think it's really important to say that the investments we made have worked. I've asked my senior leadership to work with HR, Kelly Drummond and her team in places where it hasn't worked, so we can adjust accordingly, because it has worked really well. I know Boyce has told me that in finance, they were really low, hard to compete in the private sector. My understanding now is you're mostly fully staffed compared to a few years ago, things are better.
Yes,
That's the case in most of the city, but not in every part of the city. So we're analyzing that, and we'll be trying to address the places where we're having the most severe problems in the upcoming budget. Councilmember Parker?
So help me, am I reading this correctly? Are we saying by FY '26, we're gonna need to find around 25 million in additional revenue, 23 million to cover personnel costs?
25 million from where? Where you are in the chart?
Well, are we
comparing that
saying our
to?
personnel costs are gonna increase?
They go up every year by 2.5% across the board.
Right.
And they also, the steps increase for our uniformed officers is now in effect. In fact, this was the first FY that went into effect. Frankly, a lot of what's been going on is, you remember we raised the property taxes, but we've also had this big boon in local option sales taxes and also our interest income because of the inverted yield curve that have come in. So we're in good shape to do what we need to do. But my whole point with this one is, the sky's not falling or anything, but we need to be mindful that those costs do go up. And as the economists have put it all over the nation, is that there's more jobs than there are people to fill them. That's just the way it is. That's the way it is in California. New York. That's the way it is here. So the labor force is in the driver's seat in terms of demanding better pay.
And the labor market is not static. We
No.
did a big adjustment two years ago. It worked, but people keep moving. And we also have issues with demographics among our workforce. A lot of people are eligible to retire. So that's another factor we're going to talk a little bit more about this afternoon. Any other questions on this slide before he goes on?
Okay, now the slowing of local option sales tax. Let me give the bottom up line up front. We've been growing by leaps and bounds. You can see right here that these are in millions, 48 all the way up 66 estimated for this FY. Well, the state thinks that it'll only grow 1% per year from FY '24 for the next two FYs, '25 and '26. Do I think the state's right? No. I think they're taking into account all 95 counties. We're one of the big four. We're where people come to shop and go to entertainment and things like that. We're going to have a lot more business. I think I can conservatively say that our estimate of about 2%, possibly higher in growth is probably about right. About double what the state's saying, but again, we're one of the big four. But that 2% growth does not compare to what we were seeing here. I mean, we had 12.2% growth between FY '20 and '21, gave us an extra 5.3 million. From FY '21 to FY '22, we had 8.1 million extra. 22 to 23, 6.2 million extra. You know, it just keeps going up. And if you go to 2% growth, that's only about $1.4 million a year. So it's a good news and bad news side. And that is that sales tax growth is going to continue growing, but it's just not going to grow at the rate that it was growing at. Therefore, we won't have as big of a shot in the arm coming off local option sales tax as we have been. And I just want to show you something here. Our previous 5 FYs, before anything on this graph, from FY 14 through 18, it was only 3.2% per year. And we've been doing as best as we can to show what the, raising our budgeted amounts and so forth. But the consumer resilience has just been overtaking it, us and everybody else for that matter. So 2 points, slowing of sales tax growth, but even though it's slowing, it will grow nevertheless. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Is this on? Okay. I'm wondering, so the sales tax right now, it's 9.25
No, ma'am.
for the total, but ours is 2.25.
Correct.
Sales tax grand total, if you buy something in the city of Knoxville, it's at 9.25. Yes, ma'am. 7% to the state, 2.25% to us.
So it's usually rounded up, which doesn't make much of a difference when it's 0.75% of a penny. But where does all that overage go to? Does that come to the city or to state?
The roundup is not, that's like there's some charitable entities at the cash flow that they do that. That doesn't come to the city, that goes to the designated charity, those roundup things. We don't round up, we'd love to round up and have it come to us, but if we could make that happen, that'd be fantastic, but it's not what's happening. There's individual things like, Three Rivers Market or different retail places say, will you round up for this charity? Then it just goes to that charity, and it's not a sales tax really, it's just like a donation, because it's your grocery bill, if you're spending $65.92, that extra 8 cents, a lot of people, it's not sales tax, it's a donation. Is that what you're talking about?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
So,
There is no
Not the-
rounding up for sales tax.
like
When
if I
people do
pay $10 for something, I pay 10 cents in sales taxes.
It's a 9.9.
I mean, they charge me 10 cents. Right. Right. So that adds up. Until I pay $40 for something,
Yeah,
it doesn't match.
Mr. Evans,
I know this, that you pay, the way local option sales tax works is you pay that 2.25% of whatever you buy up to $1,600. If you buy something for $1,700, that difference between 17 and 16, you're not paying any of that local option sales tax on. It's only the first $1,600. As far as penny splits and so forth, I don't know the answer to that. I just don't know. I don't know.
The state con.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if we look into it and then find out the state grabs it. Yeah. They're grabbing more than ever, and we're trying to get back restore what we used to have, but that's a good point. We'll find out and let you know what we find out.
We'll look into it.
Okay, let's talk deferred maintenance. I want to explain to you what we've got. The green lines here, or the green blocks, those are the amounts that you all, as a legislative body, have approved every year in the very respective FYs, 21 through 24. The amount in yellow for like FY 21, it was 35 million. That is the amount of, we take all the departments behind you and beside you here with insatiable appetites to spend, and we write down what it is they put in requests for, and then we look at how much we were able to fund. And then whatever the difference is, if it's on something that would turn into deferred maintenance, that's what it turns into. What do I mean? Well, if it was about repaving greenways, or if it was about sidewalks, small building repairs, stuff at the Coliseum that needed to be repaired because it was built in 61. You know, all those type things, we then calculate that, and it comes up to 35 million for FY '21. ARPA came in and drove it down, and we paid off a lot more, so it was down at 23. Back up a little bit again, 45 million here in FY '23. And then we're back up FY '24 to around 55 million. Now, I guess the key thing is, right here you can see where ARPA and TDEC ARPA enabled you all to approve a lot more in the capital budgets. Therefore, the deferred maintenance wasn't as big a percentage of the total. However, I think the key things, now that that's gone, is to look at FY '21 and FY '24. And you can see the rise, 35 to 54, while this has only risen 29 to around 41. Suffice it to say, if you do the math on that, deferred maintenance goes up about $6.7 million a year. And that does not include, see the starburst over here on the right-hand side? We're talking with Tom Clabo, and he got with the consultants that are doing that assessment of our stormwater infrastructure. Believe that by the time the whole study's done and everything, they'll probably about $750 million with a B, a little over that, dollars of stormwater infrastructure that we need to repair. So those are big ticket items. And also, while we do pay for small building repair in these green columns here, we do pay for that. We pay for sidewalks. We pay for, what am I thinking of, greenways. But according to the engineering department, talked with them, if we were to, I think, repave all of the greenways that were 20-plus years old right now, just because they need repaving, that would cost another $10 million. If we were to repair all of the sidewalks that are in need of repair, that would cost roughly $50 million. Again, it's coming from the engineering department, so I trust it. And also, I do trust them. All the small building repairs, we had a consultant take a look at all of our small building repairs, not the big PBA managed envelopes like the city-county building, this building, the safety building, but they looked at our smaller ones like the fire stations, the rec centers, on and on like that. And if you did all the repairs that they saw that needed to get done, it would have cost, I think, $29.5 million, and that was back in FY '23. So my point is, again, all is not lost, the sky is not falling, but this deferred maintenance does grow over time, and it will continue to grow. So that's something we need to be mindful of.
Thank you. Boyce, no, the
Yes, ma'am.
sky's not falling, and it won't fall during my term.
No.
However, the pushing out thing is real, and it's
Yeah.
gonna be for somebody else to deal with. At some point, is there consideration, Mayor, or whatever? I mean, is this an opportunity where you look at issuing debt, like for stormwater repairs? It's just a philosophical question. At some point, we have such an issue with our stormwater that causes so many other problems.
Yeah, council member, if you could, I'll answer that. And the answer is, when I was first running for mayor back in 2019, I was asking around to engineers and COOs, what is our biggest deferred maintenance challenge? And the answer then was stormwater, and that's the answer today, and it's not getting better. And so we are actively examining different ways to tackle that, because it's, again, one of those things like you can't do a ribbon cutting to celebrate, the tubes underground, but when we have flooding and people are, risking lives to save people in the middle of a flood, or they can't get in and out of their homes or to work, that is a major factor. Flooding is our biggest vulnerability as far as climate change is concerned. It's getting worse. It's much more frequent than, ice and snow, even though those are issues too. So that is something I don't want to keep kicking the can down. And sometimes I've asked, like, why did previous mayors and administrations kick the can down on, some of these PBA, they're city-owned, but PBA manages. And the Civic Auditorium and Coliseum and the old World's Fair Park, Volunteer Landing. Those are all city amenities. Every year, Jane Burrett and Mary Bogert come in with big needs, not fancy things, but like we need chillers, we need electric vaults and things that are super expensive and all like underground and hidden. But if they fail, the show cannot go on. And that means in performance spaces, but it also means we have flooding. So when I ask why didn't mayors address that in the past, it's because they were dealing with the pension. It's because they were dealing with the other issues that couldn't be dealt with. So I understand the temptation to, you have to deal with the most acute needs at the time. So this is getting to be more acute. This council has supported, and we're in the process of doing a full inventory to understand. You've seen it, if you look around, there's all these painting, spray painted things around our stormwater infrastructure that shows that they've assessed that. We're counting, they're going down there with cameras to say this is in medium condition, this is in inferior condition. And there's a lot of medium to inferior, and we're gonna get that assessment and then be able to say, okay, here's what we need to do, here's how much it would cost, and here are the costs if we do nothing, or if we do this in a real piecemeal way versus a more comprehensive way. So we're working on that now, and we'll plan to bring something to council to address that.
Good. I mean, KUB had to do it. At some point, it's like buying tires. It's not sexy, but they're necessary, and nothing works without that. So I'm glad to hear we're thinking about that, because when even our amenities, when they look bad, nobody wants to come to Knoxville. So some of this is what you want and then what you have to do. So.
Right. And some of the most expensive deferred maintenance is stuff that we don't see. We just know it when it fails.
Yeah.
But this is why we put this slide up here to just highlight that this has been an ongoing issue, and we're thinking about ways to address it, immediate needs and a more long-term approach.
But I guess my point was we can't fund it out of operating income. Exactly. It's going to require a serious investment, perhaps like a debt obligation to do some of that. I'm not saying it's the only way, we can get grants, but I'm just putting that out there. I mean, it's $780 million. That's not coming from operating income.
You're exactly right.
Okay, and this next slide here is, again, like I said, the sky is not falling, as my dad used to say, all is not lost. We are in good shape. Kitcher mentioned this early. We got 57 million that is relatively flexible right now. I'm talking about the unassigned fund balance in the general fund, that 41.8 million. And I'm also talking about that 5% that we set aside for best practices, 15.2 million. Those are things we could spend if we needed to. We also have 63.8 million that is, break glass in case of war. If you had to get it out, you could do it. That's the 20% that's in the stabilization account, and that's the 3% required by ordinance. The good news is, I'm here to tell you, I see it, that everybody's not like this. Everybody is not like this. A lot of my contemporaries in other cities and places, they don't have this. They don't have this. So this is a big deal. It is a very big deal. I mean, I think it's something, we've come to take for granted over time, and I guess I would too, but it's just that I know those that are not in this kind of condition. This is kind of the summation right here. It is the summation. We start off with the one I just told you about. The blue means good, by the way. Red means a little concerned. Healthy fund balance and reserves. We do have them, and that's holding us up real good right now, and I think it'll continue for a while. We do have rising personnel costs. Those are going to go up each year. If nothing else, well, one, they're going up because of the labor market. They can demand more pay, and they're doing so. But also, we have our 2.5% across the board and the 1.7 steps increase for uniform bodies that take place every year. It's like an interest rate. We have here the projected slowdown in sales tax growth. States saying they'll slow down to 1%. I'm saying 2%, possibly higher, for where we're at here in Knoxville. But sales tax is, big IS there, still growing. It is still growing, and that's a good thing. Growing deferred maintenance, we just talked about that. Every city's that way. Every city has a lot of deferred maintenance. I don't mean to belittle what I just talked about there. It is important, what the mayor and Councilwoman Fugit were talking about. But you're not gonna fix it overnight. You gotta look at ways to do it. But it is there, and it's something we need to think about. We've got the inflation that is going on, albeit at a lesser percent, 2.7%, as compared to those huge spikes earlier on, is what we're projecting. And also this thing that I mentioned when Ms. Parker slipped that question in on me and I had to go to a backup slide. I think that was one. Yeah, the real growth, no, that was the sales tax. The real growth, Vice Mayor Smith, the real growth is trending up for the last two FYs. In fact, it's almost doubled from the previous 4 FYs average. And every 1% produces another 1.5 to 1.7 million dollars extra, and you get it every year going out. So that's a big deal. And this is the bottom line. This statement right here and over here. We are in overall sound financial position. We are. We got things we need to consider. We got things we need to factor into the budget, but in general, we are still in sound financial condition. And I don't see that changing short of a catastrophe that nobody knows about or something anytime soon. I think we're on good, solid ground. Any questions?
Ms. Parker?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm still concerned about the rising personnel costs, though, that you shared.
Yes, ma'am.
And it seems like we're on good financial footing for this upcoming budget year, but those personnel costs are rising
Right.
at a much greater rate than any other revenue coming in the city.
Well, remember though, we get 35 million roughly thereabouts from where we raised the property tax. And also our local option sales tax, we hadn't been spending it all down, has been getting pumped a lot of it into our unassigned fund balance. And additionally, we've been making more off of our interest earnings too because of the inverted yield curve. So, I mean, it used to be you didn't make anything for the short-term investments. The pension board and those long-term investments made it all. We've been getting money off that too. So we've had a whole host of things that have been given us extra shot in the arms, besides when we thought it was just gonna be the property tax seeing us through. So, no, we're in decent shape right now. You remember once upon a time I said, I think it was when you were vice mayor, sir, Councilman Roberto, you asked me a couple times, well, where did we think the extra costs associated with the comp study and our revenue were going to intersect? And we said in about late FY 27, 28, I will tell you that's probably pushed out about 3 years right now, my opinion.
So you're telling me the property tax that is already in place
Oh, yes, ma'am.
is already gonna cover these increased personnel costs
It's
through
covering a lot.
FY26?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
That is correct.
That's what I'm asking.
No, and the thing is, we haven't had to tap into that.
Yeah,
I mean, we thought
that's
back then, we didn't know what local option sales tax was really gonna do. We were starting to see it, but we didn't have hardcore numbers. We thought we were gonna have to tap into that property tax in a big way. We hadn't had to tap into it much. Instead, it's been kind of helping us grow fund balance and so forth. Now, we're in good shape. It's just, but those are things, you know, when I go to that slide there, that we need to be mindful of. I mean, we can't just start throwing money out the window, but
Yeah.
Those are things we need to look at.
Before, this is a great summary slide, and I really appreciate the color coding as well. The one new hexagon up there that I don't remember being in the past is that light blue one. So it took me a little extra time to understand what that means. So I'll just explain it in case you guys need that extra time too. But that is where what Boyce was talking about before. When we see the cranes going up, when we see infill housing, when we see new commercial development that is replacing vacant lots or blighted properties, that's where we're finally seeing those revenue trends coming up. There's also pilots and TIFs that, or pilots anyways, that have matured, that are going from, that are now back on the tax rolls at the new higher appraised values. So it's taken some time to start seeing that, but it's gone from a very small amount to a little bigger amount a year, about 1 point.
We had, within the last I think with this FY and the one coming up, we will have close to $500,000 worth of TIFs and pilots. In other words, increased the revenue from them rolling off.
And that's in
So,
addition to just increased investment on,
Yeah,
you know,
well,
properties that would've-
that goes in, that
Yeah.
is also another factor in real growth. I gotta say that is the only factor besides construction would be the rolling off of TIFs and pilots, because that goes into that light blue box.
Ms.
So it's a
Parker?
good thing when that happens.
It would be helpful if we could have a multi-year projections for just the property taxes. What it's looked like over the last 2 years, you know, same that we had with the local option sales tax.
Sure, we can get that to you guys next week.
Thank you.
Let's go on to the next slide then.
Ma'am, the next slide is the timeline. Getting ready to wrap it up. We're right here, of course, at the mayor's budget retreat for council. We got the budget hearings, and good grief, I didn't, okay, 6th through the 8th of March.
Did you plan something else?
No, I just didn't, time's got away from me. Okay, I got work to do. Then we have the State of the City address here on April 26th. That's when the mayor will provide everybody the proposed budget. And then we start the first and the second reading of the tax ordinance and the budget ordinance with the legislative budget hearings in between. You'll know there is a 4-week there. We adopted that from last time. Thought that worked out rather nicely, April 30th, then May 28th, and then the new FY begins. So that is the budget calendar right there. And if you don't have a copy of this timeline, I know Will has one.
I think it's
or
in your
you can-
packet, the
or you can
timeline
ask me.
should be in your
Yeah.
packet. Well, Boyce and Kitron and finance team, thank you very much for this presentation. I know that, I think council's been asking questions all along. So since I don't see anybody asking me any more questions, let's, first of all, how about a round of applause for the finance team? Great job. Really appreciate this mid-year report. We're going to take about 15 minutes to grab lunch. There's lunch waiting outside in the hall, so, and check your email, make any phone calls you need to do, and then we'll reconvene here in 15 minutes to continue eating. You can eat while we continue our presentation. Okay, thank you. Everyone's schedule, and again, I'm really grateful for council's been working really hard this week with all the things going on, and it's Friday. We've had a great presentation from Boyce and the team this morning about the budget, and now after talking about the finances, it's important to talk about how we might spend our dollars, and how we want to invest our dollars is a reflection of our priorities and values. And the good news is that we are not changing course. We've set our values long ago, and we're going to maintain our focus on that. So I want to just review this. This is something that we worked hard to establish in my first year in office. My mantra that year was a ship that does not know it's to which port it is sailing. For that type of ship, no wind is favorable. So we really needed to know our destination, know our guiding principles. And so this document reflects several months of work of our leadership team to come up with our values, our mission, our priorities, and our purpose. And I mentioned earlier 2 of our core values that we're particularly focusing on today, although they're all intertwined, are stewardship and service. And so those are among several of our core values. I won't bother reading this slide to you, but we're going to go over some of the priorities, or all of the priorities: public safety, healthy, connected communities, clean and resilient future, and thriving businesses and good jobs. And good governance is key to all of this. When we have a good, healthy fiscal situation, that helps us do the services we need to keep our city safe, to keep our city healthy and connected, clean and resilient, and also a strong and thriving economy. So if you haven't, we try to post this document. I have it on my desk. I sometimes put it on my table. I know cabinet members and directors have it posted in their offices, and it's just a good, when things come up, and they always do, they always come up, there's usually ongoing challenges and emergent ones. I like to refer back to this document, and I ask my directors and cabinet to do the same. Does this fit? How does this fit with our mission to provide essential services, maintain infrastructure, facilitate solutions, and create opportunities? So this is a good guiding document. Now we'll go on to the who's fulfilling all the leadership roles in our city. As you know, we at the beginning of this term, we've had some new faces and some returning members of the cabinet and leadership team. So we are very excited to share this updated organizational chart. I'm thrilled to have another 4 years to serve as mayor. I'm glad to have David Brace by my side as my chief of staff. It's really good to have people who've been with the city a long time to have some institutional knowledge. And David joins Boyce and Chief Sharp and Charles Swanson and others who've been with the city for many years. And one good example was when we had a question about the pension. There's some people who were here during that change when the city was going through it. And we also understood how it compared differently to our city colleagues in Chattanooga and other places. So it's really good to have long-term experienced people leading the city, and it's good to have new faces too. So we have, to my right is Grant Rosenberg, who's been with the city 5 months now as our COO. Chief Noel is year 2. Yeah, 20 months. Okay, he'll celebrate his second anniversary in June. Cheryl Ball and Rebecca Jane Justice have been with the city for some time, but are in new roles at the cabinet level, and we're really grateful for LaKenya's continued leadership. Kristen, as nothing really works unless we tell people about it, so it's good to have great communications as well. So we have a great team. I'm not going to name everybody else on this, but also the people on that organizational chart do amazing work. And I think this recent severe weather was one example of the entire city team working together with our partners and KEMA and the county and rural metro and 911 to deal with emergency needs during that severe weather. And that is actually what we do best, I think, and we really rose to the occasion. So I just want to commend everybody, Chad and the public service team, engineering, police, fire, communications, everybody really pulled together to help respond to every single emergency need that arose during that time. So we have a great leadership team, and I feel very lucky about that. So as I start my second term, it's been a moment, I've taken some time to reflect and focus, because one thing I learned in the first year or two is that a lot of people come to the city to solve all kinds of problems, fix poverty, fix inequity, fix racism, fix healthcare shortcomings, and we can help in many ways, but it's really important to be focused and focus on what we have the capacity and legal authority to do. And so that's why my guiding principles for the second term I want to share with you all, and we'll probably share this in a document that we'll post on the website at a later date. We've been pretty busy getting ready for the housing workshop and the budget retreat. So that will come in the weeks ahead. But number one is be brilliant at the basics. When you walk around knocking on doors or talking to constituents, they really want to make sure that our streets are paved, our sidewalks are maintained, the trash is picked up, and that when you call 911, trained professional people answer the call in a timely manner and save their lives. So that's important and that's essential, and we do a great job, and I want to maintain our brilliance at that. Also just completing steady leadership and focus on the work we've already started. And that sounds like, oh, well, what about, always changing and a vision for this and a vision for that. If we complete the work we've started, that will be quite a transformation in the city for land use, for our first responders, and for, just always improving the work culture of the city of Knoxville. It's a very ambitious thing to complete the work we've started, and I'm eager to maintain our progress there. Also, just playing more offense, less defense, building bridges. I've also learned time and again the importance of collaborating with people. We get more work done when we work together. I think the warming centers and the Joint Office of Housing Stability were a great example of that. The city and county have partnered for the first time on this joint office. That's a major improvement and something to be proud of. And Erin Reed, as you heard from her last night, is an excellent leader to keep us moving forward on dealing with homelessness and housing stability. And of course, we partner with the service providers and all the volunteers. I mean, the city provided funds and staff, and in one case, a facility for the warming centers, but the people staffing it were community volunteers. And that coordination happened thanks to Erin Reed and the Joint Office. But it is important to unleash the energy of our community. We are a very generous community, and as appropriate, I'm really glad we have professional first responders, not volunteers. But at other times, it's great to tap into the volunteer spirit of our community. And always just focus on good governance, integrity, doing the right thing for our residents. And as we talked about, I'm cognizant of 4 years will go by fast, and I don't want the next mayor and the future city councils to say, why didn't they take care of X, Y, or Z? Why did they just deal with this deferred maintenance? Why didn't they do it? And I want the answer to be like, thank goodness that Mayor Concannon and the city councils of those early 2020s took care of business and were responsible, because that frees us up to continue paying our employees, to invest in greenways and parks and all the things that will continue on. So moving right along. These are what I like to call we will statements. I think people deserve to know what our plans are. And this is a plan. We will keep our community safe. We will tackle our housing crisis. We will create great jobs and grow economic prosperity. We will create great spaces and connect people. We will be a leader in climate resiliency and sustainability and provide a sound foundation for the next mayor and council. We're going to hear about all those things in a few minutes. So we'll start with priority number 1, which is keeping Knoxville safe. And that has a lot of meanings, and a lot of different entities play a role in that. Chief among them are our police department and our Office of Community Safety and our fire department. So we're going to hear from all of them right now. And Chief Noel, you get to go first.
So I want to start off by acknowledging how proud I am of the men and women of the Knoxville Police Department. Time over time, they've stepped up and really shown, how professional they are and how they step up during crisis. We just had the weather event, and it was my first snowstorm, and to watch the men and women of KPD step up and not only provide police services during some really, really challenging times, but get out there and deliver food, deliver prescription medication, give people rides, push cars out of the way, help the fire department and AMR provide medical services, anything people needed, delivering, getting people to the warming centers. They stepped up. They did anything we asked them to do. They stepped up and did, and could not be more prouder of the actions that they did. Over the last 20 months, we have thrown a lot at KPD. This is a different police department now than it was 20 months ago. And I am so proud to watch the men and women of our department grow and accept the new challenges. Just last night, we had one of our quarterly district commander forums, and Captain Long could not be there because he had a family emergency. And I stood in the back of the room and watched his team step up and embrace the community partnership model that we're doing. And we didn't miss a beat. And I don't know if that would have happened 20 months ago. So again, I just could not be prouder of them. Also want to acknowledge David Powell in the back. David is my lead on everything budget. David does a great job with that. When Boyce was talking about everybody walking in with the tales of woe, David Powell is my tale of woe guy. And I know Boyce looks all cuddly and warm up here, but when you go see him in his office, he can be a little intimidating. So David's got a really tough job, so thank you, David. I appreciate that. So when I was hired in 2022, we talked a lot about the 4 C's of policing: crime, community, culture, career development. That is the foundation for everything that KPD does, and that's going to bracket this presentation that we give you today. So starting off with crime, we had a really good year at KPD, really good year. Some of that was luck, but a lot of that was what the men and women of our department were able to do, working side by side with the Mayor's Office of Community Safety, LaKenya Middlebrook, Turn Up Knox, and her team. We reorganized our police districts. We added the Central District. I know it seems like that was a long time ago. Really wasn't that long when we added the Central District. Help us put more police officers on the street, provide better quality service. We created the first ever standalone homicide unit in KPD history. We're solving more homicides than ever before. Homicides decreased 33% last year. Non-fatal shootings dropped 12%. We're adding new analytical capability every single day. We didn't have much analytical capability before. We're building that now. We're embracing community engagement, and we're working very, very hard to engage in the community in a wide variety of different ways. All those things helped us with crime last year. But our traffic fatalities did increase. So that is something that we need to look towards in 2024. The Mayor's Vision Zero plan, looking towards slowing people down and working on more traffic enforcement for the police department, working with Vision Zero, increasing our DUI checkpoints to slow people down and to save lives.
Before we leave that slide, I just did want to say that I think it's important to note that more people do lose their lives to traffic crashes in our city than homicides, and we want to work on both those things. And KPD's role on Vision Zero is important. Enforcement's an important component, but that's also something that our new Vision Zero coordinator can help optimize our design and engineering to make things safer by design, not just through enforcement. I rode my bike here from my home today, and I arrived alive, good stuff, but, there's just room for improvement for how we can get around safely in our city, whether it's in cars, bus, or other modes of transportation. So, thank you, Chief. Please go on.
Yes, ma'am. The second C, community engagement. It's critical to our success. We have emphasized community engagement, and we're going to continue to emphasize it in the future. We really try to engage the community in a wide variety of different ways. Our district commander forums like we had last night, command staff walks. We get out into KCDC properties, around the Boys and Girls Club. We get out all across the city. Not only do we expect the men and women of our police department to get out and do walking beats, we set the example by having the command staff getting out and walking and interacting with the community, building those relationships. For the first time ever, Knoxville Police Department participated in National Faith in Blue Week. And, we had Faith in Blue events going on all across the city. It was really special to see us be able to partner with our faith-based partners and different community groups to deliver those services across the city. We have a school reading program. We have officers that get out into schools every week and read with the kids. We partnered with KCDC for a bike giveaway. Mayor, you came to that. That was a really awesome event. Not only we give bikes to kids, but we give helmets to kids, teach bike safety, bike education. It was really great. We had our Central District team. They took some kids skating on the ice skating rink. Thank you, Kendra, for helping make that happen. That was awesome to see those kids who normally wouldn't get a chance to go downtown and go ice skating with the police officers. They really had a great time. And probably our biggest thing, the thing that's most special to me, is our partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. We have embraced working with the Boys and Girls Clubs. That's where we had our district commander forum last night. And I had a couple people from the Boys and Girls Club last night tell me how special that partnership has personally been to them. We're going to build on that in 2024. So we have much more work to do here, but we will continue to meet the community where they are and work on community engagement. The third C, culture. So it's no secret that I was hired to transform the culture of the Knoxville Police Department and lead this department into the future. So a lot of successes here. We were one of 5 cities across the country, major cities, to be selected to join the National Public Safety Partnership. We're focusing on 3 core focus areas: crime analysis, violent crime, and community engagement. The Bureau of Justice Assistance and through PSP is going to help us achieve excellence in all 3 of those categories. Through the help of the City Council and the leadership of the Mayor, we were able to bring in 21 CP to conduct a full departmental assessment of our policies. We were able to get policy recommendations through the next 18 months. We're going to be implementing those policy recommendations. They also helped us to create a first-ever strategic plan for the Knoxville Police Department. And through PSP, we're going to be building on that plan in 2024. You also allowed us to bring Avero advisors in to do a technological assessment of our department. Our tech is antiquated. Our tech is out of date, and it does not talk to one another. This is the beginning steps of building quality technology in KPD, which will help us improve efficiency. Right now, Avero is working on helping us put together a RFP for the new records management system, which is going to be the backbone of all those efficiencies that we're going to be doing. Everyone in the department completed the ABLE training, the active bystandership for law enforcement training last year, and that will be in our in-service training every year moving forward. We also, working with ABLE, we were actually able to beta test the new virtual reality headsets that are going to be coming with the ABLE training. We're able to do that this year. We stood up the first ever Office of Professional Standards for KPD and building a culture of excellence within our department. We contracted with Off-Duty Management, which is a company that's going to come in and manage our police secondary employment. That actually went live this morning and it's going to be fully functional on March 1st. This is going to allow us to, for the first time, really effectively manage the off-duty and secondary employment that officers do. And we're getting out and looking at other cities and looking at what other cities are doing successfully. We've already been to Baltimore, Nashville Metro, Louisville, and Oakland. More to come. We're getting out and we're seeing what other cities are doing. We're learning from other cities and we're implementing that here, right here in Knoxville. Career development. We're developing the next generation of leaders and improving the services we deliver, which are critical to our long-term success. Big piece of this is the public safety complex. The last building that we were in was tired, and that's being nice. You know, this building we're in now is the nicest building I've ever worked in my life. But more importantly than just a building, it allows us to expand our in-house training opportunities. In addition to the one classroom that we have at our police academy out at Seaman Platte Road, we now have 4 additional classrooms at the public safety complex to expand our opportunities to not only offer the new recruit training, but offer professional development training at our police department, and we're taking advantage of that now. We've also taken advantage of opportunities to send some of our senior leaders to really, very, very prestigious training all across the country. Last year, Captains Brian Evans and Tracy Hunter graduated from the FBI National Academy. Normally, a city like Knoxville would get about 1 spot every 2 to 3 years. We got both of them in the FBI National Academy last year. Captain Nevin Long is going to be going in a couple weeks. He's going to be going to the FBI National Academy in 2024. We're getting people in prestigious national trainings. We were able to send Captain Sammy Schaefer to the 6 months Police Leadership Academy out of the University of Chicago. First ever time they offered this. Very, very prestigious and selective training. I think Knoxville was the 2nd smallest city in that class. It was mostly major cities. Really, really good stuff we're doing there. We've implemented a quarterly speaker series where we're bringing in speakers in to really, to help educate us, not just on policing, but on leadership and just overall enlighten the police department. And finally, the Chief's Professional Reading Program that we implemented to broaden our horizons, and we're going to do a quarterly moderated book discussion. Again, this is all about professional development. So recruiting. So when I travel nationally, people often ask me what keeps me up at night as a police chief. Well, it's not mass shootings, it's this. It's recruiting. So all of our past accomplishments and all of our future goals and visions cannot be achieved without staffing. So with recruiting, we have 3 tracks that we're focusing on: short-term track, medium-term track, and a long-term track. Well, our short-term track and our medium terms are our lateral transfers and our public safety recruits. So right now, we have a very aggressive ongoing digital marketing campaign to market KPD, not only regionally, but all across the country. In the last class that we just started, more than half of our recruits were from across the country. We're bringing people in from outside of Knoxville to join our department. That does not mean we're not recruiting locally, but we have to expand our recruiting base if we're going to grow this police department. We have completely restructured our hiring process to make it more fair, to make it more efficient, and to reflect the current applicant pool that we're looking at now. When I came here in 2022, the Internal Affairs Unit handled all of the background investigations. Well, that was a problem. We've now shifted that to our Human Resources Department within KPD. We're continuing to look at ways where we can improve our hiring process and make it fair, and make it efficient, and also allow us to hire a more diverse workforce. We implemented our public safety recruit program where we're hiring people quickly, putting them in basically like a pre-academy, getting them ready to get into the academy, getting them a job as soon as we're able to hire them. And this process is ongoing. We're going to continue to look at this and do everything we can to improve our process and make it one of the best ones in the country.
Just before you move to the next slide, public safety recruits also allow KPD to hire people as soon as they're 18. You have to be 21 at least to become a sworn officer, but the public safety recruits, it gives them a chance to have a paid job with benefits from 18 and up, and then also understand what the job is before they enter the academy. And then they go in with their eyes wide open to know the discipline needed, the expectations that we have in Knoxville Police Department, and then hopefully then there's a higher yield. But Chief Noel says this is an item that keeps him up at night. Me too, because all the things that we need to do to keep the community safe involve a fully staffed police department, and we have a long way to go until we're fully staffed.
We do, and the long-term approach to recruiting for us is the cadet program, just like the mayor was just talking about. That's our 18 to 22-year-olds that are not ready or not eligible to go into the academy yet. They're not police officers, but we're engaging with schools, we're engaging with Fulton, we're engaging with Central, we're engaging with AE. We have a cadet from AE in our cadet program right now. When I was hired in 2022, we had 3 cadets. Well, last year, we had the largest cadet class ever of 11. Right now, we have 15 cadets on staff. Some of them just went into the academy that we just started. We have 29 cadets in the pipeline right now for us. Now, these are not people that will be able to become police officers this year. These are people that will potentially be able to become police officers 2026, 2027, but we're bringing them in locally through our cadet program. It's something we need to continue to invest in. So, challenges for us. We have 75 vacant police officer positions right now, 75 plus. So this is what keeps me up at night. In addition to that, we have over 120 police officers with 20 years or more of service, right? We have a lot of police officers, and I see the pension board shaking their head because they see them coming in every week retiring. We have retirements every week now. We have a lot of people who are getting toward the end of their service life. So you look when you look up on the screen, that's going to continue to grow. As we get into 2025, 2026, 2027, we have more and more people eligible to retire. Knoxville is also growing. So we need to continue to hire, and we need a fully staffed police department to effectively meet the challenges of a growing city. Challenges we also have, I talked about this briefly, we have an antiquated and ineffective tech infrastructure, and we need this new tech to improve our efficiency.
Chief, if you could go back to that last slide, I think it's an important one, because our compensation plan has been very effective, but the competition for police officers with the shrinking pool has just been one of the bigger challenges. And of course, it's, the sheriff locally has increased pay for starting deputies. THP has increased pay. We're also competing with Y12. And also, I think it's important to point out, like, people aren't leaving KPD because they're not happy being a police officer with KPD. They're leaving KPD because they've got 25 years or more. They're retiring. And for some reason, I don't pretend to know why, in years past, KPD did not have academies for many consecutive years. And so we have a lot of people with 20-plus years experience and a lot of people with less than 10 years experience. But that in-between is a little bit of a low point. And they're going to stay with us, I think, I hope, but there's just not that many of them. So it's a little bit of a demographic issue and a labor market issue, and it's hitting us pretty hard.
Thank you, Mayor.
We've heard about the cultural issues, but not heard much in recent time about how that is impacting current employees. There are just small things that catch my attention sometimes. Like, one is the recruitment materials. When I look at the recruitment materials, there's an officer featured who I remember being tied up into some racial profiling cases. So when I see that image, I know it was before your time, it was 2018. But when I see that image presented as the recruitment image, it doesn't give me the message that KPD culture is shifting when that's who's being lifted up as the face of KPD.
Well, I'm not sure what you're referring to. There is no one face of KPD, and I could absolutely tell you our culture is shifting. I'm very, very proud of what we're doing.
It's that last image.
What image? Okay, I'm not aware of what you're referring to.
Officer White.
Okay, like I said, I'm not aware of what you're referring to specifically.
Well, I know his history,
Okay,
and it concerns me.
okay.
And I don't know who else it concerns, but that's something that has to be taken into consideration.
We have a lot of images that we use on a wide variety of different, if you go on our website, if you go and look at recruiting materials, there's a lot of people that we use. We're actually even using some models that are not police officers for some of these photos. When we do these photo shoots, we just did one about 6 months ago, they're very expensive to go and do those photo shoots. So in some instances, we're using, people who are not police officers, just basically models for these photos. But for us to go change photos over and over again, they get very, very expensive for us to do.
Councilmember Parker, that's a good point. I do think that, representation matters. I'm really excited about our partnership between police and fire at Fulton High School and other schools, so we can recruit more from kids growing up in the city. And the research that I'm familiar with, both here in KPD and across the country, people who are interested in policing careers, their main, their number one interest is how much am I going to get paid? And am I going to be in a city that values policing and takes care of officers? So we're trying to also make sure that our marketing is, the imagery and whatnot that we use is effective. But their first question is, what's the pay? And what kind of, is the city of Knoxville a place where you can have a good career, a varied career, and where people support police? And so I think we've made a lot of progress. It's just a very challenging time for police recruitment across the country. But those are good points. Chief, you go on.
So our goals and vision, our goal is to have a fully staffed department. We need to hire aggressively to meet the attrition that we know is coming, and it's coming sooner rather than we like. We need to continue to push for data-driven decision-making. We talk about that a lot. We need to drastically improve our data capabilities and our transparency. We just launched a new website yesterday We're also building public-facing dashboards right now. You know, we don't put, KPD, we don't put a lot of information, a lot of data public-facing, and we're building those dashboards now. So eventually, on our website, you will be able to go on our website and see public-facing data that you will be able to interact with. That is coming. We're implementing nationally recognized best practices and policies right now. Again, we went through the evaluation of all our policies through 21 CP. Over the next 18 months, we're going to be revising those policies. We're revamping our technological infrastructure. Again, we got a lot of work to do here. We are way behind. Avero Advisors is helping us with that. Strategic planning. We're going to continue to strive for a reduction in violent crime. That's going to be a challenge for us as our numbers get lower and lower and as Knoxville changes. But we continue to push to reduce crime and work with LaKenya's office to implement innovative crime reduction strategies. We're going to continue to do traffic enforcement and work with Mayor's Vision Zero to reduce traffic fatalities. We're going to strengthen community partnerships over and over again, using our place-based strategies, our offender-based strategies, problem-solving policing, multifaceted community engagement, and good segue into LaKenya's presentation, the very, very close coordination with the Mayor's Office of Community Safety.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon. I cannot promise that I will be as entertaining as Boyce or Chief, but I can guarantee I will be more brief than both of them. But we really appreciate the opportunity to share information about the great work that we are doing in collaboration with community partners and, of course, with the Knoxville Police Department in the Office of Community Safety and Empowerment. As you all know, the Office of Community Safety piece of the work is still fairly young work for the city of Knoxville. This office grew, I think, out of a desire from the administration and council to really be responsive to some very concerning increases in shootings and homicides and other violent crime that we were seeing in our community a few years ago. And you all's commitment to addressing that is what spurred and has supported this work. And we are really grateful for that initial investment and especially for your continued support of the work and your continued willingness to invest in these new and innovative strategies to address violence in our community from a holistic perspective. So as some of y'all may remember, one of our earliest initiatives in this work was designed to really be responsive to some immediate increases that we were seeing in 2020, 2021, 2022 that were centered around drastic increases in youth-involved violence. And so one of our earliest initiatives was to launch the Opportunity Youth Grant Opportunities, which started with a summer grant award and evolved into both a summer and spring break opportunity. And we have continued to really think about, as Mayor mentioned earlier, for the city as a whole, really thinking about how we focus our work and making sure that we are engaging those young people, youth and young adults who are at highest risk for being involved in violence. And so it has been an ever-evolving program. We learn something every year. We build new partnerships, and we can continue to evolve what that program looks like so that we can ensure that we are engaging those young people that are at highest risk. So for this year, we're really excited to see some additional focus come into this work. And so we are continuing to look at serving youth and young adults between the ages of 16 and 24 who may be members of a group or associated with a group or gang, who may have juvenile or criminal system involvement, disconnected from school or work, be a previous violent crime victim, or have a close friend or family member who has been impacted by violence within the last year. And those are indicators, those are national indicators for Opportunity Youth that we as a community have accepted and adopted and use to help guide how we are engaging those and identifying those who may be at highest risk. A new focus for us this year and a new partnership that we are very excited about as we continue to try to ensure that our resources are going to interrupt violence amongst those who, and provide resources and supports for those who are at highest risk, is that we have been able to develop a relationship and partnership with Knox County Juvenile Court, so that grantees this year will be agreeing to take at least a minimal number of referrals of young people who are involved in Knox County Juvenile Court. They will the providers will interact directly with court staff to make sure that they are engaging and supporting those young people in a meaningful way. And so as a part of that, we are also combining what had previously been two separate opportunities so that we can provide more continuity in our resources and services, right? And so instead of organizations being able to serve young people in a micro grant process for spring break, which really only gives them resources to engage them in that week that they're out of school, and then they have to come back and either have a whole new crop of young people or re-engage those young folks for summer. This way they can serve them in a more continual way throughout spring, summer, and fall, depending on what their program structure looks like. And so we have increased the amount for which they can apply for so that they can have that greater opportunity for continuity. And so we're really excited about continuing to try to focus this work to ensure that we are engaging those at highest risk for participating in violence, because that is how we know we will be successful. And we've been really excited.
Just before we go back, I want to underscore to council that Ms. Middlebrook has been working for a couple years now to establish this partnership with the Knox County Juvenile Court. This is not Judge Cavanagh's, this is not the city court, so it's something that has never been done before, and I'm really proud that we're going to have this more holistic approach. So once a juvenile has been in the criminal justice system, that they immediately, or more immediately, have access to these resources the city can provide to make sure that they avoid violence going forward. So that's a really big deal, and I know it's taken a while to make that happen, so I just wanted to highlight that and congratulate you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And you know, to that point, I think this was also not only a great opportunity to focus our efforts with regards to the youth and young adults who are being served, but also to be responsive to what we were hearing both from service providers and from the folks at Knox County Juvenile Court. Because one of the things that we hear from service providers often is that they have a interest in serving these youth and young adults, but they have a challenging time connecting with them or identifying them. And then what we hear from courts is we don't necessarily always know who the service providers are. And so this is a great opportunity to connect folks who are doing the work with the young people who need those services and support. So we're really excited about it. And we know that we are headed in the right direction with that. And so we are beyond proud to say that through the hard work of service providers in our community, the Knoxville Police Department and the work that they have been doing, that in 2023, we had 0 juveniles who were victims of homicide in our community.
That's really good news. I think that deserves a round of applause. You know, saving lives, that's part of our core thing, is making people safe. And so I'm really encouraged by that trend. And I think that the Office of Community Safety and Empowerment has helped with, well, you're about to hear more about that. But that's, we're looking at outcomes, we're looking at saving lives, and that's a really encouraging trend. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. So we have continued to grow our partnership with street outreach and violence interruption providers in our community. As you all will recall, a couple of years ago, we worked with community to build and design a program, and then through your support, launch the pilot for that program. And in its foundational year, Turn Up Knox really did a lot of hard work around building its reputation in the community, around engaging folks so that they understand what the work is, educating folks on what violence interruption services look like. So it involved a lot of community contacts, a lot of engagement through community events and activities, hosting community programs and events, and co-sponsoring events with community partners. And then they also held 3 focus groups with individuals who had been impacted by violence, and family members of those who maybe had been lost or who had been victimized themselves, to really hear and understand what the needs of the community were and provide some of that insight to us at the Office of Community Safety as we were building out what these programs look like. And so as they have gone into their next year of implementation, they have begun to increase the number of community contacts that they're having. They have built relationships with Knox County schools to be able to more effectively engage high-risk young people in schools in addition to through youth programming. And they have been developing relationships with service providers so that they can connect community members to those providers and make referrals as needed. And I think a key piece of that, and Councilwoman Helsley and I were kind of having a conversation about this work before the session started. One of the things that they're also doing is building relationships with providers to ensure that their staff's needs are met and cared for, because this is very heavy work. Right? This is showing up at shooting scenes in the middle of the night, maybe. It's comforting grieving families. It may be realizing that the shooting victim was somebody that you knew personally or had a relationship with personally. And that can be a lot to take in. And so being able to work with some of the service providers in our community to make sure that the mental and emotional health needs of their staff are taken care of, because that's something that we hear as a best practice throughout the country, and folks who have been doing this work for a very long time, that it's important to care for the people who are doing care work. So again, in their foundational year, it was really about building trust within the community and establishing a standard for what violence interruption and reduction is. They've continued to tailor their approaches. And, we are very thankful again through the work of not only Turn Up Knox, but other providers in our community. And I continue to give credit to the Knoxville Police Department that during our summer months, especially when violent crime can tend to be in a lot of communities very elevated, in the months of July, September, and November, we did not have any shooting homicides in our community. Another thing that I think has been really critical because of their connection to community and their on-the-ground work and that standard of kind of being a credible messenger in community and having a license to operate in community, they were able to really come to learn and understand, especially that during the month of October, those are some key anniversaries for deaths in our community that can have emotions elevated, that, can spur a high level of concern in our community. And so knowing and understanding that they were actually able to mediate and help de-escalate some potential conflicts that could have had very negative results. And so it's, a lot of times we focus on the numbers in front of us, and it's kind of sometimes difficult to quantify those things that didn't happen. Right? But when we know that they are interrupting these incidents and de-escalating situations in real time, we know that that has a tremendous impact in our community. We continue to grow our partnerships and think about how we are providing support in our community. And so this slide just kind of highlights some of the partnerships that we have. We have been very thankful for our continued partnership with the Violence Reduction Center at the University of Maryland and the technical assistance that they provide to our office, specifically in supporting the mayor and the Knoxville Police Department in that way. You all late last year approved for us to enter into a relationship with the National Institute for Criminal Justice Reform, which is a national leader in group violence reduction strategies in our community, and they have been an invaluable resource in terms of providing training and technical assistance to our office, helping us build out some of the key strategies supporting the Knoxville Police Department and building out some of their analytical capabilities and how we're thinking about engaging those at highest risk for participating in violence, but then also being able to provide training and technical assistance to some of our community partners. And so that has been a tremendous relationship. The National Office of Violence Prevention Network, which is housed in NICJR, has been a tremendous resource for our office, giving us the space to engage with other communities around the country who are doing this work, connecting us with research partners, with national leaders, with philanthropic groups who are supporting this work, with federal partners who are doing this work, and really helping Knoxville to get into these spaces and have a presence in these networks that we have not previously been able to penetrate, that will help us to ensure that we are, one, following best practices, two, making sure that we're learning from mistakes, and identifying resources that we can bring to our community. And then, of course, through, I think I saw Ben Bentley back there, with KCDC, in partnership with KCDC, participating, and the Knoxville Police Department participating in the community of violence intervention practice through HUD has been a tremendous resource for us. And then locally, continuing to build out our partnerships, whether it's through Community Mediation Center or Turn Up Knox and Justice Knox, who are great advocates for this work, and the Knoxville Interdenominational Christian Ministerial Alliance. Just 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, we were able to conclude some training that KICMA was doing, led by Community Mediation Center, to better equip some of our faith leaders to think about how they are engaging in this work and how they can help to reduce tensions and de-escalate conflict, because that was something that they said to us: we want to be involved, we want to help, we want to support, but we want to make sure that we have the tools. And so we were able to help provide that training for them. And then the mayor's office, the mayor herself actually, continues to lead our violence reduction management team, which is a huge resource for ensuring that we are staying on track with meeting our goals, that we are continuing to build capacity and think about how all of the partners in our community can pour into this work, and then also that we are holding each other accountable for meeting the goals that we have identified. And you can see here, I won't read everybody who participates, that we have a really diverse group that participates in this process, anywhere from government partners to systems level partners and service providers, but also thinking about victims and survivors and faith leaders who are on the ground and deeply impacted by this work that are feeding into it as well. So as we think about where we are going in the coming year, we have some lofty but achievable goals in front of us, and so we want to continue to expand our place-based interventions in conjunction with some of the work that Chief Noel was mentioning around their place-based strategies. We recognize that policing is not enough, that it's important for us to think about the spaces in which people live, how services are coordinated in those spaces, what resources can be deployed, whether or not there are infrastructure changes that can easily be implemented in the spaces to reduce violence. And so continuing to work with the Knoxville Police Department, as well as our community partners, our public works department, and other city services, to really think about how we are impacting the places that are most directly impacted by violence. And then continuing to grow how we engage with those who are at highest risk, because it's really critical that we have that focus and that it's not just a blanket approach, right? And so, as we think about how we are developing services and directing services, which kind of gets into the next point about expanding our service network, we have been able to see some wonderful progress with regards to our youth-related violence, because we have an existing network of services that can serve young people. It's just connecting young people to those resources. But sometimes when we think about our adult population and those at highest risk for participating in violence, it's not as clear what those services are or their ability to access them. So thinking about how we continue to engage those folks and build out a network of supports and services that we can actually connect them to help them make hopefully different choices in life and have the resources and supports that they need. And that also involves building out our capacity for street outreach. So we're continuing to train, we're continuing to develop their skills and capabilities, and it will be something that will be a continual process, because this is professional work, right? Most of you all know that my background is in law, and every year I have to take CLEs, even though I'm not practicing every day, because it's ever evolving and we have to learn. And so we want to make sure that our professionals who are boots on the ground have the resources and training that they need to do that work well. So we're very excited about the year to come, and we're really grateful for you all's continued support and investment in that work. And I will turn it over to Chief Sharp.
Thank you, Ms. Middlebrook, and I think this group, your department's come a long way from at least the community safety part being brand new. So now we're going to go from Office of community safety and empowerment. We'll take some questions before we go to the fire department. Ms. Parker?
I just had a question about the deterrence piece of it, and I know that your office has been focused on youth violence, so this is perhaps more for KPD, but I went out Wednesday night, was at Magnolia Cafe, and then I was on McCalla after that. I left there about 11 and woke up to news reports that someone was shot and killed shortly after I left. What I keep noticing is I actually went out and stayed out because I felt safer, not feeling like shootings were occurring, or at least shootings that led to death were occurring as often as they had been over the last few years. But what struck me was that I'm getting still a lot of complaints from the community, black men particularly, who feel like they're being pulled over for no reason. But I'm not seeing these hot spots. You know, just down the street from this location where there was a shooting, we had Tennessee's Most Wanted being able to hide away in this area. What are we doing to help deter crime in that area? Even just having, if we know that we have late night establishments that are open or areas where people congregate late at night, just having, you know, some sort of visibility, even an empty police car that's parked there, because then you know there's a camera there, can calm things down. Magnolia Cafe has a police car that parks outside, and I'm sure they probably pay for that, but there is the responsibility of private businesses, but then there's the responsibility of the city, and just having, you know, not a presence that profiles, not a presence that prevents individuals from feeling safe. But if you have a late night establishment, some sort of presence makes sense. What is our policy around that?
Policy around, I don't
Just
quite
having
understand the
police
question.
in the area of these late night establishments where there's, you know, like if I'm downtown at midnight drinking, I expect there to be police around downtown. And there always has been.
Mm-hmm.
But some of these other areas outside of downtown, that's not necessarily the case. Way out west, out east, da-da-da-da. Do we have a policy where we try to ensure that there's a police presence around some late-night establishments where there's drinking?
So there's a lot to unpack there, right? So we deploy our officers geographically. So officers are deployed across the city based upon call for service volume all across the city. So we have 3 districts, east, west, and central. And our officers, when they're not on a call for service, they're patrolling areas within their area of responsibility. So if there's certain areas that we're having problems with, we'll ask those officers to spend more time in those areas. Sometimes we get out and do walking beats. We do less walking beats at night because they're not very effective, because they can't really be seen. We don't stand in front of bars or other places like that. It's not something we do. I mean, we may get out and go do checks and go walk in, but we don't just have officers standing in front of those locations. But we do get out, we do patrol those areas more frequently than our others. So when we're in some areas more, we're in other areas less. So we try to split that up based upon what we're seeing with crime, with other tasks that we have in those areas. I am not a believer in just, dropping empty police cars all over the place. But that's one of the reasons why toward the end of the year, next year, we'll be building out our real-time information center, and hopefully we'll be deploying cameras, just like you suggested here about putting those cameras out. We'll be deploying cameras in some of the areas that are problems, so we can not only have those cameras as a deterrent, not only have those cameras to, if we have to monitor them, we can, but if a crime or something does occur, we could then go back in time, reconstruct what happened, and hopefully use that to help us solve the crime. So that's something we're working on long-term, but our geographical deployment, I think that's really what you're referring to.
And I'll just add that this underscores the need. Officer presence is important. That's probably the number one thing that people request all across the city, but particularly in places that are experiencing more crime. They want to see our officers in their vehicles, they want to see them walking, and it just underscores the need to get up to full authorized force. So we can do more when we have that.
And Mayor, I'll add as well that, murders fell 57% in the East District last year.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of what Captain Long and his team have done. Now, we have a long way to go. It does not mean we're declaring success and, we're walking away. We're continuing to work in that area. We had our district commander forum last night in 5 Points, our East District commander forum. So we're interacting with community there. So we really get out and do it all. We do the walking beats, we do the community engagement, we deploy geographically, and I'm really proud of the work that those officers are doing.
And just to reemphasize, what I'm asking for around any sort of surveillance program is transparency.
Sure.
The only way those cameras would be a deterrent is if people know they're there,
Absolutely.
right? So that's what I'm asking.
Sure.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the fire department. Chief Sharp.
Mayor, I just have one
Oh,
question.
yeah,
That's
I'm
okay.
sorry. Mr. Thomas?
Ms. Middlebrook, just to focus in on Turn Up Knoxville, which is a bit of an innovative approach, but it was one that was welcome. Can you just elaborate a little bit more and focus on that part of the tools that we're using for violence interruption?
Yeah, so, and I think the part of the beauty and the value of and the interruption and outreach work is that it is not specifically focused on a particular, age category or, so while a lot of our funding opportunities that are grant focused have to this point been youth focused, the work that Turn Up Knox does is focused on individuals who are or groups who are most likely to participate in violence, whether they're 13 or 40. Right. And so, through their relationships in community and a lot of the folks who are not a lot, all of the folks who are doing this work are folks who have longstanding relationships in community. And so they have kind of what in the violence interruption space is called a license to operate in community. Right. They know the folks who are in community. They know individuals who have been impacted by violence. They may have been violence impacted themselves. They may have been justice system impacted themselves at some point. And so they are able to build relationships in a way that other people may not be able to. And it gives a great opportunity for them to, one, come to understand what some of the group dynamics may be and some individual dynamics and get ahead of those before it escalates to violence. But then also where there's a real-time conflict going. And so one example that they have shared publicly, so I feel comfortable sharing it publicly. And I remember this day very well, actually, because one of the staff of Turn Up, we were at the funeral for his father who had recently been an unintended victim of violence. And a community member reached out to them directly because there was a conflict escalating, right? And so they were able to try to engage that individual and de-escalate that situation in real time. And so sometimes it's based on information that they are learning in community. Sometimes it's folks reaching out directly to them because a lot of times folks don't want to do what the next step is, right? They want help, they want resources, or it may be a family member that's saying, hey, can you talk to my son, or can you talk to my daughter or my cousin, et cetera? And so they are able to engage with and connect to those folks in real time to try to de-escalate some of those situations that are arising in real time, but then also do some of the forward-thinking work when we see conflicts maybe brewing, especially between groups, to try to get ahead of that so that it doesn't escalate. Does that answer your question?
Okay. It does. I just wanted to kind of get a general idea of kind of the approach that you were using. And as I'd mentioned before, what Turn Up Knox is doing is what I had been hearing and others had been hearing from the community, even before Turn Up Knox was envisioned, I think, about another tool that we can use to really get at that essence. And it's a non-traditional way of doing it in some ways, but that kind of ground level, street level, if I might say, connections to where people in Turn Up Knoxville have these relationships that are kind of off the radar screen of traditional ways of law enforcement or violence interruption. It's innovative, and, you know, as you say, you learn something every day. But I'm hopeful that this is showing some promise, and we will continue, of course, to monitor it and hope it encourages. But I'm happy to see the city incorporate that suggestions from the community at that level into actual programs. So thank you for that update on it, and something we'll continue to monitor and hope for the best. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, but before I get into this slide, I do want to introduce my two senior staff who are here with me. I think all of you know them, but Deputy Chief Compton is our Chief of Operations. He oversees all the firefighting division, all the people at the fire stations, and our EMS division. Deputy Chief Cheeseman is our Chief of Administration. He oversees everything else, our training, our logistics, the Fire Marshal's office, and I can't say enough about what they do and the support that they provide me and our fire department. So I just wanted to mention that real quickly. For our first slide here, several years ago when there was conversations started about the public safety complex, we were really excited that we were going to be a part of that and that we would be able to move out of our rented space that we were in, our temporary space that we were in for about 30 years, into a more permanent home and to co-locate with KPD and some other public safety organizations. That move we started last January. We were kind of the KFD admin was kind of the guinea pig. We were the first to move in. We eventually got our EMS offices moved over there, and then finally the fire marshal's offices. That move has proven to be very beneficial to the fire department. Now we have virtually all of our admin staff in the one building, including all KFD admin, our EMS folks, public education, and then also the fire marshal's office. It's also been very beneficial and to be next door to Fulton High School. As you all know, we've started some collaboration and a partnership with them. They have a new public fire administration program that is really designed to increase interest in the fire service from some of our young folks. That is us being located just right next door to them has really helped, and we're already hearing talk of some of even though they've only been going a little over a year now, of some people that are interested in the fire service and are interested in the Knoxville Fire Department. So we think that is going to prove really beneficial and actually be able to get some of our future recruits from there, and I hope very soon. Another great benefit is the fact that now we have the Emergency Management Agency, KEMA, co-located with us. They're just on the third floor just above us, and the Emergency Operations Center is there also. So during the storm event, the snow event that we had just recently, that proved really beneficial to us and KPD. Having them for us is just, we needed to go up to the EOC. It's just right up, go up one flight of steps and we're right there. So that has been very beneficial. And while I'm mentioning the storm event, I want to take just a minute to brag on all of our folks. As you all know, that the fire departments are here, the fire stations are open 24/7. We never shut down. It doesn't matter what the weather is like. We were here. We were able to respond to every single call. We had to kind of adjust what we sent on some of the calls. We got quick response vehicles out, basically four-wheel drive SUVs out to respond to a lot of the calls, working with some of the other local agencies. And we responded to countywide over 1,200 calls. And a lot of these, the ambulances couldn't get there, our fire trucks couldn't get there, but we could respond to them in SUVs. But our folks stepped up to help staff those. And the people that were out at the fire stations were there. You know, they don't get to call in and say, yeah, I got ice or I got snow on the street. I can't make it in. Well, you know, one way or another, you know, either they get in their own vehicle, we'll go pick them up. They stay at the fire station the night before so that they're ready to go the next morning. And they were there. They showed up just like always and responded to the calls that we needed them to respond to. So again, I couldn't be more proud of them for it. I mean, it's every day. We respond to emergencies, and what we respond to keeps expanding. But this was just, you know, one event where, you know, it was demonstrated their dedication to this city, and to the fire department. And our next slide is I've asked Chief Compton to talk about this one, so I'm gonna step aside and give him my seat temporarily.
I guess this means I'm in charge since I got his seat. I want to talk about fire station number 6 out in the Burlington area. This fire station has been there for 87 years. It's called Burlington Home. It was built in 1937, and it protects not only the residents and the businesses in the Burlington area, but also the thousands of people that visit the Knoxville Zoo and Shell Highway Park every year. While not the busiest fire station that we have, in 2022, this fire station responded to 174 fire calls and 972 emergency medical calls. But time and design has taken its toll on this station, when in May of 2023, the station was closed due to structural concerns. After extensive structural testing and a few repairs, it was determined that it was safe for the crews to return to the station. So in December, we were able to reopen the station. While this was great news for the department and the Burlington community, the best was yet to come. It was during the reopening that Mayor Kincannon announced that a new fire station would be built just a few hundred feet from this current location. It's important to know that the last time the city built a new fire station was approximately 30 years ago. So the new station will enhance the department's capabilities and will proudly serve the Burlington community for many years to come.
Thank you, Chief Compton. We're really excited about this. This is not not news to council members, but I do want to just take a moment to thank you all for already approving the funds that went into the land acquisition. That we own that land. That deal is done, and the station at Burlington is just one part of a broader effort to revitalize East Knoxville. As you all discussed last night, we're planning to move forward with a redevelopment along the Magnolia Avenue corridor to complement the investments at the stadium and Shell Highway Park, and use that redevelopment corridor to stimulate and catalyze more private investment in this part of our city. So the fire station, we're leading the way. We are investing in East Knoxville. This is a need, not a want, but it's also our way to show that this community needs investment and deserves investment, and is a great place to expand our services. And this will also complement the streetscapes that are moving forward under the Department of Engineering. That should be seeing some movement on that, Mr. Clabo, in the very near future, right? Yeah. Okay, next, let's hear about the Academy.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I gave you a preview of that just a second ago. Sorry about that. One of the things we're always excited about is when we get to have a recruit academy. We started our latest recruit academy back in September, actually on 9/11, pretty significant, of last year. The academy is a total of 32 weeks long. 18 weeks of that is in firefighting, hazmat, extrication training, rescue training. And so then those recruits who already have an EMS license, then after 18 weeks, they're able to go out and start serving on our companies. So we started this academy again on 9/11. 11 of them are already out serving on companies. The remaining 17 are still in EMS training. As you all know, a huge part of our job is responding to emergency medical calls. Really, it's about 3/4 of the calls we go on now. So it's very important that they are well-trained medically. All of our firefighters are licensed EMTs or BMT paramedics. And we are already in the beginning to plan for our next academy, which we plan on starting in September or October of this next year.
All right, thank you so much, Chief Sharp. And council members, I know we're running a little behind schedule, so I'm going to go ahead and ask Rebecca Jane to start off on our next thing and maybe go in a little more of a pachakucha mode, which I know Vice Mayor Smith is familiar with. You got,
I don't know if Ben can
20
do that,
seconds per
but-
slide, or anyhow,
Yeah,
but there's
we
a lot
can
of
do
great
that.
images, and a picture is worth 1,000 words, so
Yeah,
let's
let me get the.
let's rock and roll. And also, of course, we do want to, hear questions from council, but I also want to respect your time, so we'll try to balance that out. So RJ and Ben Bentley. What's that?
Hey, everybody, we're back. Thanks for your attention and questions last night. As we jumped into a little bit of an explanation on how we have the leverage to incentivize great spaces and connectivity in our community as it grows.
Can I say real quick, I just want to say it's a pleasure to be able to present to such a youthful council this afternoon. So.
Too late.
Oh, God, sorry, okay.
Okay.
We did well sleeping overnight.
I just want to know what you got to say for yourself, young man.
We'll let him talk here in just a minute. We promised a little tour of our projects today, a show and tell of the projects that have made Knoxville unique and continue to create great spaces and treat the challenges of growth as opportunities to create great housing, great parks, great streets, safe streets.
All right, so first slide is St. Mary's, and we're going to talk a little bit about projects that are happening, some that have happened, some are in the midst. So this is one that's actually a really good sort of case study for development. We're working on the north part of the campus. The city has invested a lot of money into the fire and police facility. LMU has done a great job investing in the Magdalen Clark Tower. There's an open parcel that's like perfect for housing, right? And so we're working with the private development community to be able to, working through some issues. Historic preservation is very challenging. Soils on a site can be a challenge, and there are some issues with geotechnical there. Just financing environment right now, but pretty soon we will have housing that I think will be a negotiated deal on that site that's really gonna move the needle. I say all those things just to point out that even when you already have the land, there are so many development challenges on any given site, but we're working hard to make sure we can have more housing in the community. Let's see, what else about St. Mary's? We're looking at about 200 units that will hopefully be plus or minus with in keeping. I know Councilman Thomas was really good about helping us understand not only his desires for that area, but also the community's desires. And so we know open space is a priority. There's a number of other priorities that'll be in keeping with the site plan that we presented back a little bit earlier last year. Next slide, I guess. Am I working this thing? Let me borrow that.
Maybe I should do it. Make it.
Yeah, you need to get put a timer on me. Walking down the First Creek Greenway, we just walked real fast. This is Caswell Manor. One of the points here, we're investing a lot in a lot of different types of projects. So permanent supportive housing, 50 units near East Magnolia. Let's see, advance, that was a quick one. I'm handing this back now.
Oh, yeah, so the Magnolia Burlington area has become a theme of the last 2 days, and I think that's really great. And this streetscape project will come alive thanks to the engineering department and their accurate budgets. So Burlington Fire Station, I won't keep talking about it, but we've seen the pictures, we've heard the great stories, and creating a redevelopment area that extends along the Magnolia Avenue corridor from the Old City to the Chilhowie Park area is just a great way to catalyze and inspire development along this corridor. Before we've even created a redevelopment area, we have a project that has really checked so many of the boxes for us on the types of partnerships we want to see in this area. This is a new development. Well, this will be a new development. It is a historic structure. There are 4 structures. They will be refurbished and restored, and there will be around 50 units of housing here. They're mixed income, and that will start construction in the next year. So this was a pilot project, and we were very happy to use some of those key development priorities to negotiate workforce housing into this development.
No, you approved this 2 months ago,
2 months.
and
2
it's right
months.
on Magnolia.
Months.
Great example of a NOAA, too.
Yes, naturally occurring affordable housing. This development is over 30 years old, so it also slips right into that category.
All right, back down Magnolia here. I do think it's important to mention that the reason these projects are possible is because of the big infrastructure investments from the city. So the greenways went obviously from St. Mary's down to Caswell, and then we had the Magnolia streetscapes. All of these projects are not just standalone projects. They're knit together in an ecosystem of connectivity. This is First Creek at Austin, the aerial. That's going to be about 450 units, mixed income, the first true mixed income development in Knoxville. The first phase leased up immediately. The 180 units that are, surrounded by dirt right there, although the landscaping is in, those are leasing right now, and they have a waiting list already. So there's a high demand for this. The other thing that I want to point out, City of Knoxville infrastructure funds are critical to these types of transformative projects. So not only are the roads, the streets, the plants, the planting, the underground utilities all covered by the city, but this will be walkable to the new multipurpose stadium, which we're going to get to in just a sec. So all of this is sort of a cohesive vision for a single neighborhood.
And that big lot that's got no buildings on it?
Good point. So that will be the final phase, and in the next 6 months, we'll close on that, about 150 units, 50 of which council approved permanent supportive housing for elderly. So thank you very much for that. I think that was about 1.6 million that will go toward that development and budget of about 50 million. Well, I won't say which of you can already live there, but yeah, there's a couple. All right, and then just some other pretty pictures of the streetscapes and some of the outdoor amenities. You can see, like, driving through that site, out of town people come and they say, well, there's no way that's affordable housing, but I know that's what we're trying to do. We feel like that gives everybody the same level of dignity in the place that they live.
So we've continued to say we have great projects, but like Ben said, it is all about the spaces in between also and the connectivity. So Austin Homes, First Creek at Austin will be connected to the Old City with new streetscapes and a multi-use greenway. It's really exciting to see this investment in a new piece that we used to use the term civic furniture all the time. I think we've grown tired of that one, but it's really great to see another activation with a new use for our downtown. This stadium comes along with around 300 units of housing and retail space and a new public plaza that will function like Market Square. So a new place to hang out any day of the week or to have great events for the community. We also, back to a little bit to First Creek at Austin, we have a grant application in right now for reconnecting communities that will be announced later at the end of this month. And it is a $45 million ask that is a complete streets project that will connect the Summit Hill area at the stadium along Hill Avenue and along James White Parkway to South Knoxville. So that could be extremely impactful and really, knit the community back together. So a great opportunity.
Ms. Parker,
One thing I wanted to comment on is whenever I see these mock-ups, I see so many trees. And I'm like, is this false advertising? Are y'all bringing us these trees? I want them trees.
Well, we want those trees too.
Y'all know I don't care about the stadium, but please.
Yes. Well, I mean, those trees will be there. So I can promise you that.
Fabulous.
Those were important to us also. Sticking with the downtown area, we recently had a public meeting, as you see here on the right, to get the community's feedback and refreshed ideas on how to reactivate the McClung warehouse site, which is currently surface parking, which is certainly very useful in our community, but there is a higher and better use for that to serve Knoxville as it grows. So things that we heard at that meeting were, of course, more housing, more jobs, great public spaces, greenway extensions, and parking. So it's a great opportunity to see development. And as we talked last night, this is a project that we will have a lot of conversations to really market the potential of this project and get some great teams to help design what this space can really be. A couple other projects that this council has approved for downtown. The project on the left is the site of the former MAC building. This is a mixed-use development. There are live-work units on the bottom floor. There's also a retail space. There are about 144 units of housing here that also includes workforce units. The project on the right is on the corner of Summit Hill and Gay Street. The building at the front is several levels of retail space, and there is a public plaza in between the two buildings. They'll have outdoor dining and just spaces to relax, and the building along the back is for sale condos. There are also market rate and workforce units in that condo development.
Jumping over to Western Heights, so transforming Western, once again, thank you to the city. They're really responsible for us being able to get the $40 million HUD grant and leverage that to the tune of about $200 million total investment in that neighborhood. That'll be, in the end, about 750 units of mixed income, a world-class park, some great community space and commercial space within the neighborhood. So we really are trying to create a place where anybody would want to live, but first and foremost, preserving what the community thought was good about it, letting people that live there now, giving them the right to return, so the folks that are on site as this happens, they'll stay on site, much like First Creek at Austin, so mixed income and investing in community assets that are going to make a difference, and frankly, that haven't been in that area, but now we're going to be able to put them in that area. The picture right there also was kind of the first step. That's the Head Start facility. 0 to 5-year-old, 130 kids are served. We heard, education and preparedness for kindergarten was a big gap in the community, so that was the first step in that process.
Cumberland Avenue Streetscapes is a great example of infrastructure investment by the city to really be the inspiration for private development. You'll see right now there are quite a few cranes along Cumberland Avenue, and we've got a lot of housing and mixed-use developments that are taking shape along that corridor. So really exciting to see that Cumberland Avenue is not only a safer experience for cars and pedestrians, but also setting the stage for the form-based code and density that serves the area to be realized.
And just as a reminder, the city put in about, 26 million?
Yes.
And the private sector's put in 1 billion with a B. So it's pretty good leverage.
This is for you to talk about.
Oh, wow. This is with the billion with a B, this is half of it right here.
Yep.
So about 2,000 beds, about 2,000 space structured parking and commercial on Cumberland. A lot of people complain that I'm gonna try to be funny and y'all won't laugh. A lot of people complain that the one level liquor store that was there before is now gone, and I lament that too. I like a good drink, but the need for housing, both with UT and the macro stuff going on in our economy, this is the kind of stuff that the city reinvested in Cumberland to create, and now we're having that. It's walkable, and it's going to provide a lot of great housing for students on UT, and also it'll hopefully help some of the spillover from UT students going into the other neighborhoods and driving up prices in those submarkets of Knoxville. That's going to be dampened by developments like this.
And that liquor store just moved up a couple blocks in case you still.
Relocation, oh, well, I can do both.
And I would like to point out that when we are having conversations with developers that are from Knoxville and from outside of our community, we always encourage them to work with local leasing agents and commercial developers or commercial real estate agents to get local clients and the right clients for the right spaces. Another great piece of civic furniture, a partnership for Knoxville. We are applying for a RAISE grant for $25 million to build the bridge from the North Bank to the South Bank, making the connection not just between South Knoxville and University of Tennessee campus, but to the network of greenways, sidewalks, and safe streets on the north side of campus, connecting into World's Fair Park, connecting into Cumberland Avenue, Tyson Park, and the Bearden area. So a lot of connectivity can happen with this one very large piece of infrastructure, but it's really exciting to see what opportunity that this bridge will also bring to the south side of the river to realize the form-based code that was the community-driven plan around 2006. We're also really excited to have a community engagement meeting coming up in a week or so, where we'll sit down at workstations and have a great talk with people in the community that live in South Knoxville to share their thoughts on how development on the south side can really shape the community and preserve the character of the existing neighborhoods.
So that RAISE grant is due February 27th.
Yes.
And I think we will find out maybe in the summer what the outcome is. So we'll obviously keep everybody posted. Fingers crossed. Sometimes if at first you don't succeed, you reapply and have a better outcome. And we'll have a much stronger application thanks to the state's $20 million.
Well, and on the other side of Henley Street, it's a nice little stat to know that the city has spent around $70 million in infrastructure and park improvements, and we've seen about $500 million in private investment.
Fantastic. Next slide, please. You all spent about 3 hours hearing about our housing plan last night, which deserved, thank you for dedicating your time and energy to that. Kevin DeBose did a great job preparing that presentation, and we're going to share with you right now a printed report that captures all of what was shared last night, so you can look at that at your convenience, and if you have more questions or suggestions, Kevin is your guy. But right now, I'd like to just go ahead and move on to the next thing. Kevin, did you want to say something in 30 seconds or less? Mm-hmm.
They heard enough of me.
Okay. Great job, Kevin, and to your team and everyone who presented last night. But housing was so important. I'm glad that it did warrant its own separate workshop, and I'm glad we're able to do that. We're going to move on to our last priority we're going to talk about today is jobs and prosperity. And again, this will take another 10 or 15 minutes if you need to stretch your legs, but I know Grant and Amy Nolan from the Chamber will move forward and answer questions at the end of the presentation. Grant.
Thank you, Mayor.
Who's got the clicker? You got it.
I got it right
Okay.
here. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. It's on. Okay. I always have trouble with microphones every time I speak.
Is it on?
I'm here. Yep, it's
Yeah,
good.
get really
All right.
close.
So I had a longer presentation. I'm going to condense it because we're running low on time. So I had this really inspiring presentation, but it's not going to be I'm just trying to manage expectations. It's a little bit, it's going to be a little condensed. So we're going to talk about jobs and prosperity, but, and I'm let our partners at the Chamber, Amy Nolan's going to speak a little bit about our economic workforce development initiatives. I do want to take an opportunity, though, to talk about how our city lays the groundwork, both literally and figuratively, for economic growth and what we're doing to create a really good business climate here in Knoxville. Kitchen spoke earlier about our outstanding bond rating and the factors that contribute to that. I think the third factor she talked about is really a signal that Knoxville is a great investment. It's a great place to invest, and that's really great news. There are challenges as a result of that, but that's really good news as a community. So thinking about how we as a city create value and cultivate that investment. Somebody on our team said these were very unimpressive slides. I'm not going to name names, but we talk about being brilliant at the basics, and a lot of the stuff we do isn't as flashy or isn't sexy as some of the cool place-based projects that RJ and Ben just went over. But these are really important things that contribute to a high quality of life. Of course, again, public safety, placemaking, housing, major factors that businesses and individuals consider when choosing where to invest and how to invest. But how we maintain our infrastructure, our streetscapes, our paving, our sidewalks, stormwater infrastructure, other public facilities, our transportation systems beyond our roads, moving goods and services, but helping people get from point A to point B. Public transportation is a huge impact on our workforce needs and our workforce development and our housing as well, as Cheryl touched on last night. Our tourism and hospitality, our events, what makes Knoxville a really vibrant, unique, distinctive place. Our special events team does hundreds of events per year, facilitating probably way more than that. But our facilities, our partners at Visit Knoxville, our facilities like our convention center, Wilsford Park, Chilhowie Park, Coliseum, Auditorium, those contribute a lot to our economy. It's a major economic driver. Sorry, I'm skipping around here. But at the end of the day, it's providing safe, clean, reliable, efficient, responsive city services, being brilliant at the basics. A lot of our team is in this room. My team is in this room. I'm not going to go through introduce everybody, but I'm really grateful. Again, if you look at our budget, our priorities, most of it's people, and we can't do what we do without people. So cultivating, attracting, retaining, cultivating, developing great people. We have a really great team here in the city of Knoxville, and I'm really proud to say that. But those day-to-day basics are really what make an impact on creating a good, healthy business climate, and talk a little bit about the results of that. It's working. So, if you look at this graph, we're seeing record investment in our city, and these are inspections month by month over the last few years. Just looking at November of 22 to November of 23, it's gone up 75% in number of inspections. That's remarkable. And Boyce talked about real growth. This is where we're going to see growth, and where we're going to see real economic growth in our bottom line, but as a community. So it's a great thing, but it's also created some backlog in our plans review, inspections, and permitting process. And I'm not going to belabor too much of this. We've talked a lot about it, and I really appreciate council's support of the budget amendment, which helped us make some investments in additional staff, investments in our software, streamlining our workflows, creating some tiered benchmarks, data analytics, and of course customer service improvements and addressing our backlog. But we have a backlog in plans review, it's no secret, and we're working to address that, being more streamlined, being more efficient. At the end of the day, though, I think just setting expectations for the development, setting expectations for ourselves and expectations to the development community that we can deliver on. Getting back to investments, making a good investment involves reducing risk and uncertainty. So if we can help remove that risk, remove that uncertainty to the development community, helps them make a better investment and help them do business with the city. So it's still a work in progress. We're committed to meeting those benchmarks and again, making it easier to invest in Knoxville and making Knoxville a good investment for the community. I'm going to pass it over to Amy. Let her talk about the chamber.
Thank you. And as we transition to hear from our chamber partners, I just want to thank Grant for he's off to a great start, first 5 months as COO, but also he's got a great team around him, and in particular with our development services team, Chris Halley, Tom Clabo, Brian Berry, Peter Ahrens, and all the people that work with them do a great job. And it's not just that we want to be efficient and transparent for our development services. When we catalyze the investment in our city that has our economy thriving, and when our economy thrives, it gives us the resources to take care of the public good, which is our main goal, including things like, supports for our unsheltered neighbors and investments in parks and other things. So strong economy is essential for the public good, and I'm really pleased with our progress so far and appreciate council's support. Now, let's talk about how we're bringing more jobs and expanding existing businesses and all the things the Chamber's helping us with. Mike Odom couldn't be here today, and we're glad that Amy could be here and look forward to your succinct presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mary. I seem to always get to be last on the agenda. I'm not sure if that's a good or bad thing, but we'll go. I think most of you all are familiar with this. This is what we introduced as Path to Prosperity. These are the 6 areas that we are really focused on. It's how we're organized, it's how we're operate, and I think it's what's proven vital for our ability to deliver meaningful results. The metric that somebody says, how do you judge if you're successful and what are you aiming to do? So this metric is what we're aiming to do. You'll see Knoxville, this is average annual pay. We use average annual pay because it includes versus wages or anything else. It includes your regular salary, overtime, vacation, sick time, bonuses, any kind of a side gig, anything else, and you can see where Knoxville stacks up. 57, we have seen some growth, but again, that number still lags behind some of our peer cities. We have highlighted Raleigh, so please keep that number in mind, and I'll tell you why we've highlighted Raleigh. The second metric, we look at a lot. Can you hear me all without the mic? Okay, good. That we look a lot, it's the growth between 25 to 54-year-olds. This is one of the reasons that Chief Noel's having a hard time, Mr. Claybo's having a hard time, and our 2,000 investors we hear from all the time, we don't have people to hire. You can see we've experienced a lot of growth as a community. That growth has been the 54 and up, primarily age group. They come here with some money. They come here with probably their last job, or they're doing a consulting job. They're working remotely. It has also contributed to housing. They're coming from markets where housing prices are higher, and they're able to pay cash. So that makes a difference. So you can see where we are really one of the lowest among our peer cities, with the exception of Lexington and Memphis. So why Raleigh? Why do we look at Raleigh as aspirational? Because you see where they ranked as far as average annual pay, growth of young professionals, and the other part of that is that growth is very similar to Nashville, but does anybody here want to be in Nashville? No. But what Raleigh's done is they don't have the traffic congestion issues, and their poverty is actually decreased. So that is very attractive to us, and I think our community. Quick hit on economic development wins the last year in the city. Again, part of that economic growth. Axle Logistics with 650 jobs. $38 million investment. Custom Foods, 250 plus jobs, $51 million investment. Both of these projects are in the city. We also have a business attraction job, much smaller in numbers, but much higher in average annual pay. And you should see that us announce that, we hope, in the coming month or two. They are over on that business park off of Pleasant Ridge. They've got that big blue thing that sticks up where Copper Cellar headquarters are, off of Western.
Near Lonsdale, basically, right past Texas Avenue.
Past Texas Avenue, almost to 640, but not across from the cemetery.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And they package foods for restaurants. So Chick-fil-A, mac and cheese, that's where it comes from. Yeah. We are very focused, continue to, on our DBE community, disadvantaged businesses. What we hear from them is two challenges, at more customers and also access to capital. So access to capital has kind of been the niche that we focused on. We don't provide direct services in counseling, things of that nature. There's probably a half a dozen organizations, many of which you all fund, that provide those services. But we did work to launch the 865 Opportunity Fund. That is a $6 million fund targeted to women and minority-owned businesses. It is funded with 3 local banks, community reinvestment dollars. Over 60% of those dollars have to be invested with women and minority businesses. They've made 4 or 5 loans so far, and every single one of them have been women and minority-owned businesses.
Yeah, I think this is just really important I know council's heard from people, access to capital is a huge challenge. This is one part of the solution. Thank you.
Okay. Knox is our digital literacy effort. And so we actually began in this back in the pandemic when we realized schools weren't going to open because of the lack of, number one, computers, number two, internet access. We convened a group of stakeholders together around that. And so to get that stopgap of broadband access while the school system bought computers. What we continue to learn through that program is we have an amazing lack of digital literacy skills in our community. And as you can't access services, you can't access employment, you can't help your kids make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do in school unless you have this digital literacy. So we were able to do a pilot demonstration program with a KUB grant. We have since been awarded the Truist Foundation grant to continue this work, and we are applying on behalf of the city and the county for state funds that will really ratchet up that work. Already we're working with a wide variety. We're working with community schools, Goodwill Industries, the Center for English, which are, if you go by a church and you see them say ESL classes available here, that's the folks that are doing that. So fantastic program. Higher up Knoxville, we just launched a workforce services website, and on that website, they will find you'll find resources for job seekers, employers, parents, students, and educators. Can find information, training opportunities, job listings, workforce and relocation service, interview tips, much more. You will see as part of that, Tom Clabo and I were just talking about internships. Internships are a great way to grow your talent pipeline. We have an internship consultant on staff that will go out and talk to employers. Many very large employers do this. Many small employers think, oh, I'm too small to do this. I could never do it. We'll come out and talk to you one-on-one how that internship will match your needs. We know 2 issues that are preventing the kind of growth in young professionals, demographics that we are seeking to see. Again, that is future of housing. You all have talked about that at length. We've also been very active in engaging young professionals to understand that, yes, they have influence on this issue, and to teach them how to get engaged, how to make a difference, because we do know that what young professionals want is to know that they can make the difference in their community, and we really encourage them to become active in this issue and engaged on this issue. Child care, a huge crisis nationwide in our state and locally in our community. We're working hand in hand with United Way, who has developed a great strategic plan that's really been easy to go in and pick out with Ellie and say, okay, we can do this piece. So we're looking at legislation, talking to partners across the state on how we can make a difference, provide more affordable and accessible childcare. We held a workshop for employers last week to make them understand that this is not just a parent issue. That was, the title of that workshop was, how do you keep and retain parents? Because this has become such an issue, and what role do they play in that?
Hey, Amy, quick question about that.
Sure.
So like, when I lived in Indianapolis, Lilly obviously is a really great employer.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a great childcare, but they also have really high wage jobs. Do we have employers, like large employers here that could implement childcare for their employees?
The only employer that we had that was a large one was Scripps Networks, had a child care facility. So what we're working though on is the idea, with Ellie, of micro centers. So, and you might have seen the announcement where they did that at Sarah Moore Green. Have a micro center for things that are the problem is, I don't know that we have employer that has that kind of critical mass like Scripps Networks did, and that kind of really nice campus environment. I can tell you, when we talk to business and traction folks, this is an area where we would be willing to incentivize something like that.
I'm like, that's exactly what I
Mhm.
said. Are there employers that have enough mass, enough employees, that would make it worthwhile?
Mhm.
They need just a little bit to.
Yeah, and we are one of the few states in the country that do not offer an employer tax credit. And many states do. I think there's maybe about a dozen states that do not offer that tax credit anymore. We'd like to see it. What makes it tough in Tennessee is we don't have an income tax. And now that we're getting rid of if the governor's proposed getting rid of the franchise tax, there's not many tax credits left out there that are gonna be appropriate. So, yeah, one of the things we're looking at is barriers, and we're looking at, there's a TASER study. One of the things the state does is say, well, sorry, the fire marshal, he makes it so difficult. He goes beyond what needs to do. There's a lot of this. We have two departments, education and DHS, on the state level that regulate. There's a lot of red tape. So we're really looking hard at those red tape regulations, some of the systemic issues with childcare in our state.
I mean, I don't know, it's just very frustrating because we're so bound up in this state about third grade reading.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that we can't do better care is we have so many children that are coming in not ready, and a large portion of them are ESL, but we're not providing anything to make them ready. And that's not per se us at this table's problem. It's like, literally, like, seriously, this is not that complicated.
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Conversations between the chamber and different entities around child care sites, largely with the private sector, or are there conversations also with the University of Tennessee and other larger employers in our area that aren't necessarily private employers?
Yes, ma'am.
Do they have?
Yes, ma'am.
sites?
So I know the lab has worked for quite some time on create, like Oak Ridge National Lab. UT's has a learning center very close. It's been around since 30 years. Has been part of it. United Way convened a huge hundreds and hundreds of working groups to create a strategic plan around that. And I'd be happy to email you a copy of that. They did a fantastic job. And like I said, we're able to go in there, as well as other community members. I think can go in there and say, hey, this piece is me. And we can handle that. So, yeah, I'll be happy to send that to you. Finally, how we'll be moving forward is we're going to talk about transitioning Knoxville's economy for the imagination age, and hate to end this on a downer, but I can tell you that our community is not ready for this imagination age. So what do we need to do to get ready? We're going to have to focus on high-skilled jobs, high-wage companies, innovative entrepreneurs, and RJ, I hate to say it, but civic furniture, to make Knoxville the kind of cool place that young professionals do want to come to and start their careers and build their lives here. So happy to, was I quick enough?
That was super quick, and I appreciate Chamber being here. Ms. Parker?
I just have to say, as a somewhat young professional, not as young as some of the little babies in this room, I keep saying we need vibrant city. I continue to be shocked when I'm downtown and it pretty much shuts down at 10 o'clock. These are the things I think of as attracting young professionals. But it doesn't seem to be a part of the equation. I don't know, that's just what I keep pushing for, is some evidence that you all are talking to young professionals for opinions, because I can't imagine that leads to baseball stadiums.
I would just say that, creating great public spaces is a huge part of what we are doing and have been doing. And I don't even really know how old you are, but I talk to young professionals all the time who work for the city, who are my own daughters, and get feedback on what it is they like and what makes them engaged in our city. And I think we have a lot of work to do, but I feel more vibrancy today than ever before in my 23 years here, not just downtown, but also in Happy Holler, in Sevier Avenue, in along Sutherland, and other parts of our urban core and beyond. So I think that Amy points out, you saw the demographics. We need to do a better job of attracting more people, particularly people who are at the beginning of their careers. But I think we're headed in the right direction, and it is a priority. So. All right, thank you all for your many hours today. Council members, again, thanks for all your dedication to this, to our budget. Today we learned about the finances, where we are, and also we learned about the priorities that will shape our budget proposal. So please plan a meeting with me if you haven't already, and this will be an ongoing conversation, and we look forward to the next couple months as we develop our budget together. Thanks.